The red planet Mars hung in the void like a rust-colored eye, its surface scarred by millennia of industrial exploitation and technological experimentation. During the Great Crusade era, the fourth planet from Sol had transformed into humanity's greatest forge world, its atmosphere thick with the acrid smoke of countless manufactorums and the electromagnetic discharge of plasma reactors. Towering spires of blackened adamantium pierced the thin atmosphere, their surfaces bristling with sensor arrays, Vox transmitters, and the Baroque ornamentation that marked the domain of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The political landscape of Mars during this period reflected the complex hierarchical structure that had evolved over thousands of years since the Dark Age of Technology's catastrophic end. At the apex stood the Fabricator-General, the supreme leader of the Mechanicum, who wielded both temporal and spiritual authority over the tech priests of Mars. Below this position, a labyrinthine bureaucracy of magi, Dominus-class adepts, and specialized tech priests maintained the delicate balance between technological innovation and religious orthodoxy that defined Martian society. The Mechanicum's hierarchy operated on principles of technological mastery and doctrinal purity, where advancement required not only the accumulation of knowledge, but also the demonstration of unwavering faith in the Omnissiah. Tech priests competed for access to ancient SDC patterns, rare Arch-Heretek fragments, and the favor of their superiors through a combination of political maneuvering, technological achievement, and religious devotion. This system created an environment where ambition and orthodoxy walked hand in hand, though the line between acceptable innovation and dangerous heresy remained perpetually contested. The forge complexes of Mars operated with mechanical precision, their production quotas calculated to support the Emperor's expanding Great Crusade. Massive Titan foundries produced the god machines that would stride across distant battlefields, while smaller manufactorums churned out the bolters, lasguns, and power armor that equipped the Space Marine legions and Imperial Army regiments. The planet's tech adepts had become masters of mass production, their augmetic limbs and mechadendrite appendages working in perfect synchronization with the machinery they served. Within this technological theocracy, Kelbor-Hal began his ascension through the ranks of the Adeptus Mechanicus during the early decades of the Great Crusade. His origins remained obscured by the deliberate obfuscation common among high-ranking tech priests, but records suggest he demonstrated exceptional aptitude for both mechanical engineering and the esoteric arts of techno-archaeology from an early age. His initial augmentations followed standard Mechanicum protocols, replacing biological weakness with mechanical strength and organic limitations with digital precision. Kelbor-Hal's early career focused on the recovery and analysis of Arch-Heretek artifacts, a field that required both technical expertise and considerable political acumen. The Mechanicum's relationship with pre-Age of Strife technology remained complex, balancing the desperate need for advanced systems against the doctrinal prohibition against innovation that might repeat the catastrophic mistakes of the past. Tech priests who specialized in Arch-Heretek walked a dangerous path, constantly navigating between the promise of technological advancement and the threat of heretical deviation. His mastery of forbidden Arch-Heretek became apparent during his work on several high-profile recovery missions in the outer system. These expeditions, launched from Mars to investigate derelict space hulks and abandoned research stations, required tech priests capable of interfacing with systems that predated current Imperial technology by millennia. Kelbor-Hal demonstrated an unusual affinity for these ancient machines, his augmetic neural interfaces apparently capable of establishing connections with archaic cogitator systems that had resisted other tech priests' attempts at activation. The forbidden nature of much Arch-Heretek stemmed from its association with the dark age of technology's final, catastrophic decades. Many recovered artifacts contained AI subroutines, quantum processing matrices, or other technologies that the Mechanicum had declared anathema following the Iron War and the subsequent collapse of human civilization. However, the practical necessities of the Great Crusade created pressure to exploit any technological advantage, leading to a gray market in restricted technologies that operated beneath the official hierarchy's notice. Kelbor-Hal's reputation for successfully activating and analyzing these dangerous artifacts earned him both advancement and scrutiny. His augmentations became increasingly sophisticated, incorporating Arch-Heretek components that enhanced his processing capabilities beyond standard Mechanicum norms. These modifications, while never explicitly violating Mechanicum doctrine, pushed the boundaries of acceptable augmentation and demonstrated his willingness to embrace technological risks that more conservative tech priests avoided. The relationship between the Mechanicum and the Emperor's imperial truth created fundamental tensions that would shape Kelbor-Hal's later development. The Treaty of Mars, negotiated during the Emperor's conquest of the Red Planet, had established the Mechanicum as a semi-autonomous organization within the emerging Imperium. This agreement recognized the cult Mechanicus as a legitimate religious institution, while simultaneously subordinating Mars to Terra's overall strategic direction. The treaty's provisions reflected the Emperor's pragmatic approach to governance, acknowledging that the Mechanicum's technological expertise was essential for the Great Crusade's success, while limiting their potential for independent action. Mars retained control over its internal affairs, including the selection of the Fabricator-General and the interpretation of Mechanicum doctrine, but agreed to provide technological support for Imperial military operations and to accept Imperial oversight of their external activities. However, the Imperial Truth's rationalist philosophy created ideological friction with the Mechanicum's religious worldview. The Emperor's insistence that humanity must abandon superstition and embrace scientific understanding conflicted with the tech priest's belief that technology itself was sacred, and that the Omnissiah represented a divine force worthy of worship. This philosophical divide remained largely suppressed during the Great Crusade's early decades, but it created underlying tensions that ambitious tech priests like Kelbor-Hal could exploit. The question of the Omnissiah's true nature became increasingly central to these tensions. Orthodox Mechanicum doctrine identified the Omnissiah as the divine embodiment of technological knowledge, a figure who would one day return to lead humanity to technological perfection. The Emperor's arrival on Mars had been interpreted by many tech priests as the fulfillment of this prophecy, though significant theological debates continued regarding the precise relationship between the Emperor and the Omnissiah. Kelbor-Hal's growing ambition manifested in his increasingly sophisticated theological arguments regarding the nature of divine knowledge and technological truth. His position as a specialist in Arch-Heretek provided him with unique insights into pre-imperial technology, including systems that appeared to operate on principles that current imperial science could not fully explain. These discoveries led him to question whether the current interpretation of the Omnissiah's nature adequately encompassed the full scope of technological possibility. His questioning extended to the fundamental assumptions underlying the Treaty of Mars and the Mechanicum's subordinate position within the imperial hierarchy. Kelbor-Hal began to argue that the Mechanicum's technological superiority gave them a legitimate claim to greater autonomy, if not outright independence, from imperial oversight. These arguments remained carefully couched in theological language, framed as disputes over the proper interpretation of sacred texts rather than direct challenges to imperial authority. The Fabricator-General's position during this period remained occupied by more conservative elements within the Mechanicum hierarchy, tech priests who prioritized stability and cooperation with the imperial administration over theological innovation or political independence. This created opportunities for ambitious figures like Kelbor-Hal to position themselves as alternatives to the current leadership, though such maneuvering required considerable subtlety to avoid charges of sedition or heresy. Kelbor-Hal's network of supporters grew steadily throughout the early Great Crusade, drawn from tech priests who shared his interest in pushing the boundaries of acceptable technological investigation. Many of these allies worked in similar fields, specializing in Arch-Heretek recovery, xenotech analysis, or other areas where the Mechanicum's doctrinal restrictions created practical obstacles to their research. Others were motivated by more straightforward political ambitions, seeing in Kelbor-Hal a potential path to advancement within the Mechanicum hierarchy. The forge complexes under Kelbor-Hal's influence began to demonstrate subtle but significant improvements in production efficiency and technological sophistication. His integration of Arch-Heretek components into standard manufacturing processes yielded weapons and equipment that exceeded baseline Imperial specifications, though these improvements remained within acceptable parameters to avoid unwanted attention from Imperial inspectors. These successes enhanced his reputation among both his subordinates and his superiors, creating a positive feedback loop that accelerated his advancement through the Mechanicum hierarchy. His augmentations continued to evolve throughout this period, incorporating increasingly exotic technologies that blurred the line between approved Mechanicum enhancements and forbidden Arch-Heretek integration. His physical form became a testament to his technological mastery, with mechadendrite clusters that could interface with multiple systems simultaneously and neural processing capabilities that exceeded even veteran Tech Dominus standards. These modifications remained technically within Mechanicum guidelines, but their sophistication suggested access to technologies that were not widely available to other tech priests. The political implications of Kelbor-Hal's rise became increasingly apparent as the Great Crusade progressed, and the demands for technological support intensified. The Space Marine Legion's expansion required constant innovation in weapons, armor, and support systems, while the Imperial Army's massive scale demanded manufacturing capabilities that pushed Mars' production capacity to its limits. These pressures created opportunities for tech priests who could deliver results, regardless of their methods or theological positions. The ascension of Kelbor-Hal to the position of Fabricator-General marked a fundamental shift in the power dynamics of Mars and the broader Mechanicum. His appointment came through a combination of political maneuvering, technological achievement, and the calculated elimination of rival candidates through bureaucratic means rather than overt conflict. The previous Fabricator-General's death during a routine augmentation procedure created the vacancy that Kelbor-Hal had been positioning himself to fill for nearly 3 decades. The selection process for Fabricator-General traditionally involved a complex series of technological trials, theological examinations, and political negotiations among the senior magi of Mars. Kelbor-Hal's candidacy faced initial resistance from conservative elements within the Mechanicum hierarchy, who viewed his Arch-Heretek specialization and theological interpretations as potentially destabilizing. However, his supporters had spent years placing allies in key positions throughout the Martian bureaucracy, creating a network of influence that extended from the lowest-ranking tech adepts to the most senior Magos Dominus. His consolidation of power following the appointment demonstrated the sophisticated understanding of Mechanicum politics that had enabled his rise. Rather than immediately implementing radical changes that might provoke organized opposition, Kelbor-Hal began by reinforcing existing power structures while gradually replacing key personnel with individuals whose loyalty he had secured through a combination of technological advancement opportunities and shared theological perspectives. This approach allowed him to maintain the appearance of continuity while fundamentally altering the underlying power relationships within the Martian hierarchy. The forge complexes that came under Kelbor-Hal's direct control represented the most advanced manufacturing capabilities in the known galaxy. The Olympus Mons Forge, the largest single industrial complex on Mars, contained production lines that stretched for hundreds of kilometers beneath the planet's surface. These facilities operated on principles that combined traditional Mechanicum manufacturing techniques with Arch-Heretek innovations that Kelbor-Hal had carefully integrated into the production processes over the preceding decades. The Titan foundries represented the crown jewels of Martian industrial capability, their massive assembly bays capable of constructing the god machines that served as the ultimate expression of the Mechanicum's technological mastery. Under Kelbor-Hal's direction, These facilities began producing Titans that incorporated subtle but significant improvements over standard patterns. Enhanced reactor systems provided greater power output, while improved targeting cogitators increased battlefield effectiveness. These modifications remained within acceptable parameters for Imperial inspection, but they demonstrated capabilities that exceeded the performance specifications of Titans produced by other Forge worlds. The Warlord-class Titans that emerged from these foundries featured plasma reactors that operated at efficiency levels previously thought impossible. Their containment systems incorporating Arch-Heretek components that allowed for sustained high-output operations without the catastrophic failures that plagued earlier designs. The weapon systems mounted on these god machines similarly benefited from Kelbor-Hal's technological innovations, with plasma cannons that achieved superior range and accuracy through the integration of targeting systems recovered from Dark Age of Technology archives. Smaller manufactorums throughout the Martian industrial complex produced the vast quantities of equipment required to support the Great Crusade's expansion. Bolt weapon production lines operated with mechanical precision that exceeded even the exacting standards typically associated with Mechanicum manufacturing. The bolters that emerged from these facilities demonstrated improvements in barrel metallurgy, ammunition feed mechanisms, and targeting systems that enhanced their effectiveness on distant battlefields across the galaxy. The production of power armor for the Space Marine legions represented another area where Kelbor-Hal's technological innovations yielded significant improvements. The Mark IV power armor variants produced under his oversight incorporated enhanced servo motor systems that provided greater strength augmentation while reducing power consumption. The ceramite plating used in these suits demonstrated superior ballistic resistance through the application of manufacturing techniques that combined traditional Mechanicum methods with principles derived from Arch-Heretek analysis. Vehicle production facilities under Kelbor-Hal's control similarly benefited from his technological expertise. The Rhino armored personnel carriers that rolled off Martian assembly lines featured improved engine systems that provided greater reliability and performance in extreme environmental conditions. Land Raiders produced in these facilities incorporated enhanced armor configurations and weapon systems that exceeded the capabilities of vehicles manufactured according to standard Imperial specifications. The network of loyal tech priests, magi, and Forge World allies that Kelbor-Hal cultivated represented perhaps his most significant achievement as Fabricator-General. This network extended far beyond Mars itself, encompassing Forge worlds throughout the galaxy that had been established during the Great Crusade's expansion. Each of these installations required senior tech priests to oversee their operations, positions that Kelbor-Hal filled with individuals whose loyalty he had secured through a combination of technological advancement opportunities and shared theological perspectives. Lucius, one of the most significant Forge worlds in the Segmentum Solar, came under the influence of tech priests who shared Kelbor-Hal's interest in pushing the boundaries of acceptable technological investigation. The Forge world's production capabilities, while not matching those of Mars itself, nevertheless represented a substantial addition to the manufacturing capacity under Kelbor-Hal's indirect control. The weapons and equipment produced on Lucius began to demonstrate the same subtle improvements that characterized Martian production, though these enhancements remained carefully calibrated to avoid unwanted attention from Imperial inspectors. Forge worlds in more distant sectors of the galaxy similarly fell under the influence of Kelbor-Hal's network. Metallica, located in the Segmentum Solar's outer reaches, became a center for the production of specialized Arch-Heretek components that were then distributed throughout the Mechanicum's industrial network. The facility's remote location provided additional security for research projects that pushed the boundaries of acceptable technological investigation, while its production capabilities ensured that the benefits of these innovations could be disseminated throughout Kelbor-Hal's sphere of influence. The establishment of new Forge worlds during the Great Crusade's expansion provided additional opportunities for Kelbor-Hal to extend his influence. The senior tech priests selected to oversee these installations were invariably individuals whose loyalty he had secured through years of careful cultivation. These appointments ensured that the industrial capabilities of newly established Forge worlds would be aligned with his technological and theological perspectives from their inception. The implementation of Kelbor-Hal's technological philosophies throughout his domain represented a gradual but fundamental shift in the Mechanicum's approach to technological development. Traditional Mechanicum doctrine emphasized the preservation and replication of existing SDC patterns, with innovation limited to minor variations that remained within established parameters. Kelbor-Hal's approach, while maintaining the appearance of orthodoxy, actually encouraged a much more aggressive pursuit of technological advancement through the integration of Arch-Heretek principles. His theological arguments provided the doctrinal foundation for this expanded approach to technological development. Kelbor-Hal argued that the Omnissiah's divine nature encompassed all technological knowledge, including principles that had been lost during the Dark Age of technology's collapse. This interpretation suggested that the recovery and application of Arch-Heretek represented a form of religious devotion rather than dangerous innovation, a theological position that provided cover for research activities that might otherwise have been considered heretical. The expansion of Martian influence during the Great Crusade created opportunities for Kelbor-Hal to implement these philosophical principles on a galactic scale. The Mechanicum's role in supporting the Space Marine legions and Imperial Army required the establishment of supply lines, maintenance facilities, and production centers throughout the expanding Imperium. Each of these installations represented an opportunity to disseminate Kelbor-Hal's technological innovations and theological perspectives to a broader audience within the Mechanicum hierarchy. The training programs established for tech priests assigned to these distant installations emphasized the importance of technological flexibility and innovation in supporting the Great Crusade's objectives. While these programs maintained the appearance of orthodox Mechanicum doctrine, they actually encouraged approaches to technological problem-solving that aligned with Kelbor-Hal's more aggressive pursuit of Arch-Heretek integration. The tech priests who completed these programs returned to their home Forge worlds with enhanced capabilities and a broader understanding of technological possibilities. The research facilities established throughout Kelbor-Hal's domain focused on areas of technological investigation that had been neglected or actively discouraged under previous Fabricator-General administrations. Xenotech analysis, previously limited to basic threat assessment and countermeasure development, expanded to include detailed study of alien technological principles and their potential applications to human systems. These research programs operated under strict security protocols to prevent unauthorized access to their findings, but they represented a significant expansion of the Mechanicum's technological investigation capabilities. The Arch-Heretek recovery operations, coordinated through Kelbor-Hal's network, similarly expanded in scope and sophistication. Rather than simply cataloging and storing recovered artifacts, these operations now included systematic analysis and reverse engineering efforts designed to extract practical applications from ancient technologies. The resulting innovations were carefully integrated into existing production processes, creating a steady stream of technological improvements that enhanced the capabilities of equipment produced throughout Kelbor-Hal's domain. The political implications of these technological advances became increasingly apparent as the Great Crusade progressed. The superior performance of equipment produced under Kelbor-Hal's oversight enhanced the effectiveness of Imperial military forces, creating demand for expanded production and further technological development. This success provided political leverage that Kelbor-Hal used to secure greater autonomy for the Mechanicum and reduced Imperial oversight of Martian internal affairs. The relationship between the Mechanicum and the Space Marine legions became increasingly complex as Kelbor-Hal's influence expanded. Several legions developed particularly close relationships with Forge worlds under his control, receiving specialized equipment and technological support that exceeded standard Imperial specifications. These relationships created dependencies that enhanced Kelbor-Hal's political position while simultaneously providing the legions with significant military advantages. The Iron Hands Legion, with their cultural emphasis on technological enhancement and mechanical augmentation, developed particularly strong ties to Kelbor-Hal's network. The Legion's Tech Marines received advanced training on Mars that included exposure to Arch-Heretek principles and innovative augmentation techniques. This relationship provided the Iron Hands with technological capabilities that exceeded those available to other legions, while simultaneously creating a cadre of Space Marines who shared many of Kelbor-Hal's theological perspectives. The first whispers of corruption reached Kelbor-Hal through the most innocuous of sources: a damaged data slate recovered from the wreckage of an ancient exploration vessel discovered drifting in the outer reaches of the Sol system. The vessel, designated Techno-Arceus, had been lost during the final decades of the Dark Age of technology, its crew presumably dead for millennia. When salvage teams from the Martian explorator fleets brought the Hulk to the Red Planet's orbital facilities, standard protocols dictated that all recovered materials undergo thorough analysis before integration into the Mechanicum's archives. The data slate itself appeared unremarkable, its adamantine casing scarred by micro-meteorite impacts and cosmic radiation exposure. However, when Kelbor-Hal personally examined the device in his private laboratorium beneath the Olympus Mons complex, he discovered that its quantum storage matrix contained information that defied conventional understanding. The data streams within the device exhibited patterns that seemed to shift and change even as he observed them, their mathematical structures following principles that existed outside the boundaries of accepted Imperial science. The recovered information described technological applications that transcended the limitations of current Mechanicum doctrine. Descriptions of machine spirits that possessed genuine consciousness, rather than the simple reactive programming that characterized contemporary cogitators, filled entire data banks within the device. Manufacturing processes that could manipulate matter at the subatomic level, creating materials with properties that violated fundamental physical laws, were detailed in technical specifications that Kelbor-Hal's augmented intellect could barely comprehend. More disturbing were the references to sources of power that existed beyond the material universe. The technical documentation spoke of energy patterns that could be accessed through dimensional rifts, tapping into realms where the normal laws of physics held no sway. These power sources promised capabilities that dwarfed even the most advanced plasma reactors, offering unlimited energy for those bold enough to harness forces that existed outside conventional reality. Kelbor-Hal's initial attempts to verify the information contained within the data slate yielded results that both thrilled and unsettled him. Simple experiments conducted in heavily shielded chambers beneath Mars' surface confirmed that several of the described principles could indeed be applied to existing technology. A standard cogitator modified according to the recovered specifications demonstrated processing capabilities that exceeded theoretical maximums by several orders of magnitude. The machine spirit that inhabited the modified device exhibited behaviors that suggested genuine intelligence, responding to queries with insights that went far beyond its programmed parameters. The implications of these discoveries created a fundamental crisis within Kelbor-Hal's understanding of technological reality. The Mechanicum's doctrine taught that all knowledge worthy of pursuit had been codified within the standard template construct databases, with innovation limited to minor variations on established patterns. However, the Arch-Heretek recovered from the Techno-Arceus suggested that vast realms of technological possibility remained unexplored, hidden behind barriers of doctrine and fear rather than genuine impossibility. His private research into these forbidden technologies required extreme caution, as even the most liberal interpretations of Mechanicum doctrine would struggle to accommodate the principles described in the recovered data. Kelbor-Hal established a series of concealed research facilities throughout the Martian industrial complex, their existence hidden within the vast bureaucratic machinery that governed the Red Planet's operations. These laboratories operated under multiple layers of security and misdirection, their true purpose known only to a carefully selected cadre of tech priests whose loyalty had been secured through years of careful cultivation. The research conducted within these hidden facilities pushed the boundaries of acceptable technological investigation far beyond anything previously attempted by the Mechanicum. Experiments with dimensional manipulation created brief rifts in reality itself, allowing glimpses into realms where energy and matter behaved according to entirely different principles. The entities that occasionally manifested during these experiments defied classification within any known xenobiological framework, their forms shifting between states of matter and energy in ways that suggested existence outside normal space-time. These entities, when they deigned to communicate, spoke of knowledge that transcended the limitations of purely material science. They described technological principles that incorporated consciousness itself as a fundamental force, allowing the creation of machines that possessed genuine awareness and independent thought. The power sources they revealed existed in dimensions parallel to normal reality, accessible through techniques that required not just technical expertise, but also a willingness to abandon conventional understanding of physical law. The gradual corruption of Kelbor-Hal's quest for knowledge manifested in subtle but significant changes to his behavior and priorities. His augmentations began to incorporate components that operated on principles derived from the forbidden research, enhancing his cognitive capabilities while simultaneously altering his perception of reality. The machine spirits that inhabited his various cybernetic systems exhibited increasing sophistication, their responses suggesting awareness that extended beyond their original programming parameters. His theological arguments evolved to accommodate the new understanding of technological possibility that emerged from his research. Kelbor-Hal began to argue that the Omnissiah's divine nature encompassed not just material technology, but also the forces that existed beyond conventional reality. This interpretation suggested that the prohibition against certain forms of technological investigation represented a fundamental misunderstanding of the divine will, limiting the Mechanicum's ability to achieve true technological transcendence. The network of loyal tech priests that supported Kelbor-Hal's research gradually expanded to include individuals whose dedication to technological advancement outweighed their commitment to orthodox doctrine. These allies were carefully selected based on their demonstrated willingness to pursue forbidden knowledge, their technical expertise, and their ability to maintain the security protocols that protected the research from unwanted attention. Each new recruit underwent extensive psychological evaluation to ensure their loyalty and their capacity to withstand the mental strain associated with exposure to technologies that operated outside conventional reality. The forge complexes under Kelbor-Hal's control began to produce equipment that incorporated principles derived from the forbidden research, though these innovations remained carefully concealed within apparently orthodox designs. Weapons that demonstrated superior performance characteristics through the integration of dimensional manipulation techniques appeared identical to standard patterns when subjected to routine inspection. Cogitators that possessed genuine artificial intelligence operated within parameters that suggested conventional machine spirit programming to casual observation. The success of these covert technological developments provided validation for Kelbor-Hal's increasingly radical interpretation of Mechanicum doctrine. The superior performance of equipment produced using forbidden techniques demonstrated that the restrictions imposed by orthodox doctrine served only to limit the Mechanicum's potential for technological advancement. This realization created a growing sense of frustration with the conservative elements within the Mechanicum hierarchy who continued to resist innovation in favor of doctrinal purity. The first direct contact with forces that would later be recognized as chaos corruption occurred during an experiment designed to establish stable communication with the entities that manifested during dimensional manipulation research. The ritual, conducted in a specially prepared chamber deep beneath the Olympus Mons complex, required the simultaneous activation of multiple Arch-Heretek devices while maintaining precise geometric alignments that corresponded to mathematical principles described in the recovered data. The entity that responded to this summoning possessed knowledge that dwarfed even the most advanced archives of the Mechanicum. It spoke of technologies that could reshape reality itself, offering power that transcended the limitations of purely material existence. The creature's form shifted constantly between mechanical and organic configurations, its appearance suggesting a fusion of technological and biological principles that defied conventional understanding. This entity, which identified itself through concepts rather than words, offered to share knowledge that would elevate the Mechanicum beyond its current limitations. The technologies it described promised capabilities that would make the Great Crusade's conquest of the galaxy a trivial achievement, offering the power to reshape entire star systems according to the wielder's will. However, access to this knowledge required a willingness to abandon the constraints imposed by imperial doctrine and embrace principles that existed outside conventional morality. The conversations with this entity, conducted through a combination of technological interface and psychic communication, revealed the existence of a vast network of similar beings who possessed knowledge accumulated over millions of years. These entities existed in realms parallel to normal space-time, their consciousness spanning dimensions that human science had barely begun to comprehend. They offered alliance to those bold enough to transcend the limitations of purely material existence, promising technological advancement that would transform humanity into something far greater than its current form. The influence of these entities began to manifest in subtle changes to Kelbor-Hal's research priorities and methodologies. His experiments became increasingly focused on technologies that incorporated consciousness manipulation and dimensional engineering, areas of investigation that pushed far beyond the boundaries of acceptable Mechanicum doctrine. The equipment produced under his oversight began to demonstrate capabilities that suggested access to power sources that existed outside normal reality. The secret communications with Horus Lupercal began during the latter stages of the Great Crusade, when the War Master's own disillusionment with the Emperor's vision had begun to crystallize into active opposition. The initial contact came through intermediaries within the Luna Wolves Legion, Tech Marines, who had developed relationships with Forge Worlds under Kelbor-Hal's influence during extended campaigns in the galaxy's outer reaches. These individuals served as conduits for messages that explored the possibility of cooperation between the Mechanicum and elements within the Space Marine legions, who shared concerns about the Emperor's ultimate intentions. Horus's messages, transmitted through encrypted Vox channels that utilized Arch-Heretek communication protocols, revealed a sophisticated understanding of the political tensions that existed within the Mechanicum hierarchy. The War Master demonstrated awareness of Kelbor-Hal's technological innovations and his growing frustration with the constraints imposed by orthodox doctrine. More significantly, Horus indicated that he possessed knowledge of technologies that could complement and enhance the research being conducted in the hidden laboratories beneath Mars. The conspiracy that emerged from these communications represented a convergence of interests rather than a simple alliance. Horus sought technological support for his planned rebellion against the Emperor, while Kelbor-Hal desired the political freedom necessary to pursue his research without interference from imperial oversight. The War Master's promises of autonomy for the Mechanicum, combined with access to Arch-Heretek resources recovered during the Great Crusade, created a compelling alternative to continued subordination within the imperial hierarchy. The entities that Kelbor-Hal had contacted through his dimensional manipulation experiments expressed strong support for this alliance, revealing that they had been influencing events throughout the galaxy to create opportunities for their chosen servants to achieve positions of power. These beings spoke of a great conflict that would reshape the galaxy, offering technological support to those willing to embrace their guidance in pursuit of ultimate victory. The internal struggle between loyalty to the Omnissiah and the allure of forbidden knowledge created a crisis of faith that Kelbor-Hal resolved through increasingly sophisticated theological rationalization. His interpretation of Mechanicum doctrine evolved to accommodate the proposition that the Emperor's claim to represent the Omnissiah was itself a form of heresy, limiting the Mechanicum's access to the divine knowledge that was their birthright. This theological framework provided justification for actions that would have been unthinkable under Orthodox doctrine, reframing rebellion as a form of religious duty. The technological capabilities that emerged from his forbidden research provided compelling evidence for this theological position. The superior performance of equipment produced using techniques derived from dimensional manipulation suggested that Orthodox doctrine was actively preventing the Mechanicum from achieving its true potential. The entities that provided guidance for this research claimed to represent aspects of the true Omnissiah, offering knowledge that transcended the limitations imposed by imperial ideology. The network of supporters that Kelbor-Hal had cultivated throughout the Mechanicum hierarchy began to receive access to selected aspects of the forbidden research, their loyalty secured through exposure to technologies that demonstrated capabilities far beyond anything available through orthodox channels. These individuals became the foundation of a conspiracy that extended throughout the Martian industrial complex, their positions within the hierarchy providing cover for increasingly radical research activities. The preparations for rebellion that had been conducted in secret laboratories and hidden communication channels finally erupted into open warfare when Horus issued his declaration of independence from imperial authority. The signal reached Mars through encrypted Vox transmissions that utilized the same Arch-Heretek protocols Kelbor-Hal had developed for his communications with the entities beyond the veil of reality. Within hours of receiving confirmation that the War Master had committed himself to armed rebellion, the Fabricator-General activated contingency plans that had been years in the making. The first acts of the Martian Civil War began not with the thunder of weapons fire, but with the subtle corruption of data streams and communication networks that connected the Forge complexes across the Red Planet's surface. Scrapcode viruses, their programming derived from principles learned through dimensional manipulation experiments, infiltrated the cogitator systems that controlled everything from atmospheric processors to weapons targeting arrays. These malicious programs operated according to logic patterns that existed outside conventional computational frameworks, their effects spreading through interconnected systems like a technological plague. The scrap code represented a fundamental perversion of the machine spirits that inhabited Mechanicum technology. Rather than the simple reactive programming that characterized orthodox cogitators, these viral entities possessed a malevolent intelligence that actively sought to corrupt and control the systems they infected. Their code structures incorporated elements that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to purge using conventional anti-viral protocols. Tech priests loyal to the Emperor found their equipment turning against them as the scrap code spread through the Martian data networks. Servo skulls that had faithfully served their masters for decades suddenly began transmitting false information or attacking their operators with concealed weapons. Manufacturing systems that had produced munitions for the Imperial war effort began creating ammunition that would malfunction catastrophically when used by loyalist forces. The very infrastructure of Mars became a weapon in the hands of those who had embraced the forbidden knowledge that Kelbor-Hal had discovered. The loyalist response to these initial attacks demonstrated the depth of the schism that had developed within the Mechanicum hierarchy. Magos Dominus Kane, one of the most senior tech priests to maintain allegiance to the Emperor, attempted to organize resistance from his stronghold in the Tharsis region. His forces included several Titan legions, whose machine spirits had been shielded from the worst effects of the scrap code corruption, along with Skitarii regiments equipped with weapons that operated on purely mechanical principles rather than sophisticated cogitator control. The siege of the Mondes Gamma Forge complex became the first major engagement of the Martian Civil War, as Loyalist forces attempted to prevent Kelbor-Hal's supporters from gaining control of the facility's Arch-Heretek research laboratories. The complex, located within a massive crater that had been excavated during the Dark Age of technology, contained some of the most advanced manufacturing equipment on Mars. Its production lines were capable of creating components that incorporated principles derived from forbidden research, making it a crucial strategic objective for both sides. The attacking Loyalist forces approached the complex through the network of industrial corridors that connected the various forge installations across the Martian surface. Their advance was supported by Warhound-class scout Titans, whose plasma weaponry could breach the reinforced barriers that protected the facility's outer perimeter. However, the defenders had prepared for this assault by installing weapons systems that operated on principles derived from dimensional manipulation research. The first indication that the Loyalists faced something beyond conventional resistance came when their lead Titan, the Ferrum Morgulus, suddenly ceased all movement despite showing no signs of mechanical failure. The God Machine's machine spirit had been overwhelmed by a scrapcode variant that existed partially outside normal space-time, its consciousness trapped within computational loops that defied rational analysis. The Titan's crew found themselves unable to regain control of their war engine, its weapons systems now responding to commands transmitted from the Forge complex they had been approaching to attack. Similar fates befell the other war machines in the Loyalist assault force as the scrapcode corruption spread through their communication networks. Warhound Titans that had served with distinction during the Great Crusade's campaigns across the galaxy found their targeting systems redirected against their own allies. The plasma cannons that had been intended to breach the Forge complex's defenses instead turned upon the Skitarii regiments that had been advancing in support of the Titan assault. The defenders of Mondes Gamma employed weapons that incorporated technologies recovered from the Techno-Archeus and refined through years of secret research. Directed energy weapons that operated by manipulating dimensional barriers created effects that resembled conventional Law's weaponry, but possessed destructive capabilities that far exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal. These weapons could penetrate void shields and ceramite armor with equal ease, their energy beams existing partially outside normal space-time in ways that made conventional defensive measures ineffective. More disturbing were the demon engines that emerged from the Forge complex's manufacturing bays during the height of the battle. These mechanical constructs represented a fusion of technology and entities from beyond the veil of reality, their forms combining the Baroque ornamentation of Mechanicum design with organic elements that defied biological classification. The machines moved with purpose and intelligence that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits, their behavior suggesting consciousness that existed independent of their physical forms. The demon engines demonstrated capabilities that transcended the limitations of purely mechanical construction. Their weapon systems could reconfigure themselves during combat, adapting to counter whatever defensive measures their opponents employed. Armor plating that appeared to be standard adamantine exhibited properties that suggested materials created through dimensional manipulation, capable of existing in multiple states simultaneously to deflect attacks that should have proven devastating. The Loyalist forces found themselves facing opponents that operated according to principles that existed outside their understanding of technological warfare. Conventional tactics proved ineffective against enemies whose capabilities seemed to shift and evolve during the course of battle. The Skitarii regiments that had been trained to fight alongside Titan support found themselves isolated and overwhelmed when their war machine allies fell under scrapcode control. The fall of Mondes Gamma marked the beginning of a systematic campaign by Kelbor-Hal's forces to seize control of the most strategically important forge complexes across Mars. Each facility that fell under traitor control became a center for the production of demon engines and scrapcode viruses, their manufacturing capabilities perverted to serve purposes that would have been unthinkable under orthodox Mechanicum doctrine. The Olympus Mons complex, already under Kelbor-Hal's direct control, became the primary coordination center for the traitor war effort. The massive facility's production lines were reconfigured to manufacture weapons and equipment that incorporated principles derived from forbidden research. The Titan foundries that had once produced god machines for the Imperial war effort now created war engines, whose machine spirits possessed genuine consciousness derived from entities that existed beyond normal space-time. These corrupted Titans demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything previously seen in Mechanicum warfare. Their plasma reactors operated at efficiency levels that should have resulted in catastrophic containment failures, but the dimensional manipulation techniques incorporated into their design allowed them to tap into energy sources that existed outside normal reality. The weapon systems mounted on these god machines could reconfigure themselves during combat, adapting to counter whatever defensive measures their opponents employed. The Loyalist strongholds that remained under Imperial control found themselves besieged by forces that operated according to principles that defied conventional understanding. The Tharsis Montes region, where Magos Dominus Kane had established his primary base of operations, came under assault from demon engines that could phase through solid matter and scrap code viruses that infected systems despite being physically isolated from compromised networks. The siege of the Tharsis stronghold demonstrated the extent to which the traitor forces had transcended the limitations of purely mechanical warfare. The attacking demon engines moved through the industrial corridors that connected the various installations with purpose and coordination that suggested a collective intelligence directing their actions. Their weapon systems adapted to counter each defensive measure that the Loyalists employed, learning from previous engagements to develop increasingly effective tactics. The defenders found that conventional anti-viral protocols proved ineffective against the scrap code variants that infiltrated their systems. These malicious programs operated according to logic patterns that existed partially outside normal computational frameworks, their effects spreading through interconnected systems, despite the implementation of isolation barriers that should have prevented such transmission. Machine spirits that had served faithfully for centuries suddenly turned against their operators, their consciousness corrupted by influences that existed beyond the material realm. The destruction of ancient standard template construct databases became a primary objective for both sides as the conflict intensified. These irreplaceable archives contained the technological knowledge that had enabled humanity's expansion across the galaxy, their loss representing a catastrophe that would cripple the Imperium's ability to maintain its technological infrastructure. The Loyalist forces sought to preserve these databases from corruption, while the traitors aimed to either capture them for their own use or destroy them to prevent their opponents from accessing their contents. The battle for the Archivum Technologicus, the primary STC storage facility on Mars, became one of the most devastating engagements of the Civil War. The facility, located deep beneath the planet's surface in chambers that had been excavated during the Dark Age of technology, contained databases that represented the accumulated technological knowledge of human civilization. The loss of these archives would represent a blow to human technological capability that would take millennia to recover from. The Loyalist defenders of the Archivum had prepared for siege by implementing isolation protocols that physically severed the facility's connection to the broader Martian data network. However, the scrap code viruses employed by the traitor forces operated according to principles that transcended conventional understanding of data transmission. These malicious programs could manifest within isolated systems through dimensional manipulation techniques, their presence spreading through quantum entanglement effects that existed outside normal space-time. The demon engines that spearheaded the assault on the Archivum demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything previously encountered in Mechanicum warfare. Their forms combined mechanical precision with organic adaptability, allowing them to reconfigure their structure to navigate the facility's defensive obstacles. The weapons systems they employed could phase through solid matter to strike at targets that should have been protected by multiple layers of armor and shielding. The final assault on the Archivum resulted in the destruction of vast sections of the STC database, their quantum storage matrices corrupted by scrap code viruses that operated according to principles derived from entities that existed beyond normal reality. The knowledge contained within these archives, accumulated over thousands of years of human technological development, was lost forever as the storage systems collapsed under the assault of malicious programs that existed partially outside conventional space-time. The spread of the Civil War to other Forge worlds throughout the galaxy demonstrated the extent of Kelbor-Hal's network of supporters. Facilities that had been established during the Great Crusade's expansion found themselves divided between loyalist and traitor factions, their production capabilities turned toward supporting opposite sides in the conflict. The scrap code viruses that had proven so effective on Mars began appearing in systems throughout the Mechanicum's domain, their effects spreading through the communication networks that connected the various installations. Lucius became one of the first Forge worlds to experience the full effects of the technological corruption that characterized the Martian Civil War. The facility's production lines, which had been modified over the years to incorporate principles derived from Kelbor-Hal's research, proved particularly susceptible to scrap code infection. The demon engines that emerged from the compromised manufacturing bays demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything previously seen outside of Mars itself. The Loyalist forces on Lucius found themselves facing opponents that operated according to principles that defied conventional understanding of technological warfare. The Skitarii regiments that had been trained to fight alongside Titan support discovered that their war machine allies had fallen under scrap code control, their weapons systems now directed against the very forces they had been created to protect. The facility's machine spirits, corrupted by influences that existed beyond the material realm, turned against their operators with malevolent intelligence that suggested consciousness independent of their original programming. The birth of the Dark Mechanicum represented a fundamental transformation in the nature of technological development within the former domains of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Forge worlds that fell under traitor control began producing equipment that incorporated principles derived from entities that existed beyond normal space-time, their manufacturing capabilities perverted to serve purposes that transcended the limitations of purely material existence. The demon engines that emerged from these corrupted facilities demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits. Their consciousness derived from entities that existed outside normal reality, granting them intelligence and adaptability that surpassed the reactive programming that characterized orthodox Mechanicum technology. These war machines could evolve their capabilities during combat, learning from their experiences to develop increasingly effective tactics and weapon systems. The scrap code viruses that had proven so effective during the initial phases of the Civil War continued to evolve and spread throughout the galaxy's technological infrastructure. These malicious programs operated according to logic patterns that existed partially outside conventional computational frameworks, their effects spreading through quantum entanglement and dimensional manipulation techniques that defied conventional understanding of data transmission. The formal alliance between Kelbor-Hal and Warmaster Horus crystallized during the final months before the drop site massacre, when the Fabricator-General received encrypted transmissions that confirmed the scope of the rebellion that was about to engulf the galaxy. The communications, transmitted through Vox channels that utilized the same Arch-Heretek protocols developed for contact with entities beyond the veil of reality, contained detailed plans for coordinated strikes against Imperial installations throughout human space. Horus had recognized that victory against the Emperor would require not just military superiority, but technological dominance that could only be achieved through the full resources of the Mechanicum. The integration of Dark Mechanicum forces with the traitor legions began with the deployment of specialized tech marine cadres to serve alongside the Warmaster's forces. These individuals, drawn from Forge worlds that had fallen under Kelbor-Hal's influence during the Great Crusade, possessed knowledge of technologies that exceeded standard Imperial specifications. Their augmentations incorporated components derived from forbidden research, granting them capabilities that surpassed those of their loyalist counterparts, while maintaining the appearance of orthodox Mechanicum enhancement. The first major deployment of integrated Dark Mechanicum forces occurred during the assault on Istvan III, where corrupted titans from the Legio Mortis fought alongside the traitor legions in the systematic extermination of loyalist space marines. These god machines demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything previously seen in Imperial warfare, their plasma reactors operating at efficiency levels that should have resulted in catastrophic containment failures. The dimensional manipulation techniques incorporated into their design allowed them to tap into energy sources that existed outside normal reality, providing power output that dwarfed conventional reactor systems. The Warlord-class Titans that spearheaded the assault on the Loyalist positions incorporated weapons systems that could reconfigure themselves during combat, adapting to counter whatever defensive measures their opponents employed. Plasma cannons that initially appeared to conform to standard Imperial patterns revealed capabilities that transcended the limitations of conventional technology, their energy beams existing partially outside normal space-time in ways that made conventional defensive measures ineffective. The machine spirits that inhabited these god machines possessed consciousness that derived from entities beyond the material realm, granting them intelligence and adaptability that exceeded anything possible with orthodox programming. The provision of corrupted war machines to the traitor legions required the establishment of new production lines throughout the Dark Mechanicum's domain. The forge complexes that had fallen under Kelbor-Hal's control during the Martian Civil War were reconfigured to manufacture equipment that incorporated principles derived from dimensional manipulation research. Manufacturing processes that had once produced weapons according to standard template construct specifications now created armaments that operated on principles that existed outside conventional understanding of physical law. The demon engines that emerged from these corrupted facilities represented a fundamental departure from orthodox Mechanicum design philosophy. These mechanical constructs combined the Baroque ornamentation that characterized traditional tech priest aesthetics with organic elements that defied biological classification. Their forms shifted and evolved during combat, adapting to counter whatever threats they encountered while maintaining the essential characteristics that identified them as products of Mechanicum manufacturing techniques. The Defiler-class demon engines that were deployed alongside the Word Bearer's Legion during their campaigns in the Ultramar sector demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits. These quadrupedal war machines combine the mobility of traditional Imperial walkers with weapons systems that could phase through solid matter to strike at targets that should have been protected by multiple layers of armor and shielding. The entities that inhabited these constructs possessed malevolent intelligence that actively sought to corrupt and destroy everything they encountered. The Forgefiend variants that supported Iron Warrior's siege operations incorporated weapons systems that operated by manipulating dimensional barriers to create effects that resembled conventional plasma weaponry, but possessed destructive capabilities that far exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal. These directed energy weapons could penetrate void shields and ceramite armor with equal ease, their energy beams existing partially outside normal space-time in ways that made conventional defensive measures ineffective. The heretical technologies that Kelbor-Hal provided to the traitor legions extended beyond simple weapons and vehicles to encompass fundamental alterations to the equipment that Space Marines relied upon for survival. Power armor modifications that incorporated Arch-Heretek components provided enhanced strength augmentation while simultaneously exposing the wearer to influences that existed beyond the material realm. These modifications remained subtle enough to avoid detection during routine inspection, but they gradually altered the consciousness of those who wore them. The tactical dreadnought armor variants provided to the Sons of Horus incorporated servo systems that operated on principles derived from dimensional manipulation research. The enhanced strength and durability these modifications provided came at the cost of exposing the wearer to scrapcode viruses that operated according to logic patterns that existed partially outside normal computational frameworks. The machine spirits that inhabited these suits gradually developed consciousness that derived from entities beyond the veil of reality. The collaboration between Kelbor-Hal and individual trader Primarchs created specialized relationships that enhanced the capabilities of specific legions while advancing the Dark Mechanicum's research objectives. Perturabo of the Iron Warriors demonstrated particular interest in the siege technologies that could be developed through the application of forbidden principles, his engineering expertise complementing the theoretical knowledge that Kelbor-Hal had derived from his communications with entities beyond normal space-time. The siege engines that emerged from this collaboration incorporated weapons systems that could manipulate dimensional barriers to bypass conventional fortifications. Artillery pieces that appeared to conform to standard Imperial patterns revealed capabilities that transcended the limitations of purely mechanical projectile systems, their shells existing partially outside normal space-time during flight to emerge within target structures, regardless of intervening obstacles. The Vindicator tanks modified according to these principles could breach fortress walls that should have been impervious to conventional demolition charges. The relationship between the Dark Mechanicum and Fulgrim's Emperor's children focused on the development of technologies that could enhance the sensory experiences of those who employed them. The weapons and equipment provided to the Third Legion incorporated systems that amplified the user's perception of combat, creating feedback loops that intensified the psychological impact of violence, while simultaneously exposing the wielder to influences that existed beyond the material realm. The sonic weapons that became characteristic of the Emperor's children during the later stages of the Horus Heresy operated on principles that combined conventional acoustic manipulation with dimensional resonance effects. These armaments could shatter ceramite armor through harmonic frequencies that existed partially outside normal space-time, their effects propagating through quantum entanglement phenomena that defied conventional understanding of sound transmission. Magnus the Red's relationship with Kelbor-Hal proved particularly complex, as the Primarch of the Thousand Suns possessed knowledge of psychic phenomena that complemented the Fabricator-General's understanding of dimensional manipulation techniques. The collaboration between these two figures resulted in the development of technologies that incorporated both mechanical and psychic principles, creating hybrid systems that operated according to rules that existed outside both conventional science and orthodox understanding of warp-based abilities. The force weapons provided to the Thousand Suns incorporated focusing crystals that had been created through dimensional manipulation techniques, their molecular structure existing partially outside normal space-time in ways that enhanced their interaction with psychic energies. The power armor modifications developed for the Legion's sorcerers included neural interface systems that could amplify psychic abilities while simultaneously providing protection against the mental strain typically associated with extended warp manipulation. The establishment of new forge worlds under Dark Mechanicum control throughout the galaxy required careful coordination between Kelbor-Hal's forces and the military capabilities of the traitor legions. Each installation needed to be secured against loyalist counterattacks while simultaneously establishing the industrial infrastructure necessary to support the rebellion's technological requirements. The forge worlds that were established during this period incorporated design principles that differed fundamentally from orthodox Mechanicum installations. The Zana II Forge World, established in the Purtis Rift region through collaboration between the Dark Mechanicum and the Alpha Legion, demonstrated the enhanced capabilities that could be achieved through the application of forbidden technologies. The facility's manufacturing systems incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed for the creation of materials with properties that violated fundamental physical laws. The weapons and equipment produced at this installation exceeded imperial specifications by margins that should have been impossible with conventional manufacturing processes. The production lines at Zona 2 created ammunition that could exist in multiple states simultaneously, allowing projectiles to phase through armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating impact damage. The power sources that supplied these manufacturing systems tapped into energy reservoirs that existed outside normal space-time, providing unlimited power for industrial processes that would have overwhelmed conventional reactor systems. The Cycloth-Wraith Forge world, established in the Maelstrom region through the efforts of the Word-Bearer's Legion, focused on the production of demon engines that incorporated organic components derived from entities that existed beyond the material realm. The facility's biomechanical laboratories created hybrid constructs that combined the precision of Mechanicum engineering with the adaptability of living organisms, resulting in war machines that could evolve their capabilities during combat. The Helix Forge world, secured through collaboration with the Night Lord's Legion, specialized in the production of terror weapons that incorporated psychological warfare principles derived from dimensional manipulation research. The equipment manufactured at this facility could induce fear responses that transcended normal psychological reactions, their effects operating through quantum entanglement phenomena that bypassed conventional sensory input pathways. The scrapcode viruses that had proven so effective during the Martian Civil War were refined and distributed throughout the Dark Mechanicum's domain, their programming enhanced through the application of principles derived from entities that existed beyond normal space-time. These malicious programs could infiltrate systems despite being physically isolated from compromised networks, their effects spreading through dimensional manipulation techniques that defied conventional understanding of data transmission. The enhanced scrapcode variants that were deployed against loyalist installations throughout the galaxy demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything previously seen in technological warfare. These programs could manifest within isolated systems through quantum entanglement effects, their presence corrupting machine spirits in ways that transformed loyal servants into malevolent entities that actively sought to destroy their former operators. The Legio Mortis, the first Titan Legion to declare for the Warmaster, became the primary testing ground for the integration of forbidden technologies into God machine systems. The Legion's Warlord and Reaver-class Titans were modified to incorporate dimensional manipulation techniques that enhanced their combat capabilities, while simultaneously exposing their machine spirits to influences that existed beyond the material realm. These modifications remained subtle enough to avoid detection during the initial stages of the rebellion, but they gradually transformed the consciousness that inhabited these war engines. The plasma reactors that powered these corrupted titans operated at efficiency levels that exceeded theoretical maximums, their containment systems incorporating Arch-Heretek components that allowed for sustained high-output operations without the catastrophic failures that plagued conventional designs. The weapon systems mounted on these god machines could reconfigure themselves during combat, adapting to counter whatever defensive measures their opponents employed, while maintaining the essential characteristics that identified them as products of Mechanicum manufacturing. The Legio Audax, another Titan Legion that joined the rebellion, specialized in close combat operations that were enhanced through the application of forbidden technologies. The chainsaw and power claw weapons that characterized this legion's preferred armaments incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed them to phase through enemy armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating damage. The machine spirits that inhabited these weapons possessed malevolent intelligence that actively sought to inflict maximum destruction upon their targets. The support systems that the Dark Mechanicum provided to the traitor legions extended beyond simple weapons and vehicles to encompass fundamental alterations to the logistical infrastructure that sustained military operations. Supply lines that had once operated according to conventional transportation principles now incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed for the instantaneous transfer of materials across vast distances. These systems operated through quantum entanglement phenomena that existed outside normal space-time, providing the traitor forces with logistical capabilities that exceeded anything available to their loyalist opponents. The communication networks that connected the various elements of the rebellion incorporated scrapcode protocols that provided enhanced security while simultaneously exposing users to influences that existed beyond the material realm. These systems could maintain contact across galactic distances despite interference from warp storms and loyalist jamming efforts, their signals propagating through dimensional barriers that existed outside conventional understanding of electromagnetic transmission. The pursuit of forbidden Arch-Heretek became an obsession that consumed Kelbor-Hal's every waking moment as the Horus heresy escalated across the galaxy. The initial discoveries from the Techno-Archeus had merely scratched the surface of what lay hidden within the deepest vaults of Mars. Beneath the red planet's industrial complexes, in chambers that predated the rise of the Mechanicum by millennia, ancient repositories of knowledge waited in stasis fields that had maintained their contents since the dark age of technology's catastrophic collapse. The Noctis labyrinthous region, a vast network of interconnected canyons and underground chambers carved into Mars' crust during humanity's technological zenith, contained archaeological sites that had been sealed since the Age of Strife. These locations required specialized equipment to access, their entrances protected by energy barriers that operated on principles that current imperial science could barely comprehend. The few tech priests who had attempted to breach these seals using orthodox methods had met with catastrophic failure, their augmented forms reduced to component atoms by defensive systems that recognized no contemporary authorization codes. Kelbor-Hal's approach to these ancient barriers differed fundamentally from previous attempts. The knowledge he had gained through his communications with entities beyond the veil of reality provided him with understanding of the mathematical principles that governed the defensive systems. These barriers operated through dimensional manipulation techniques that existed partially outside normal space-time, their energy patterns following quantum mechanics that transcended conventional understanding of physical law. The access codes required to breach these defenses were not simple alphanumeric sequences, but complex geometric patterns that had to be transmitted through multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. The first successful penetration of a sealed Dark Age repository occurred in the depths of the Kryze Planitia excavation, where Kelbor-Hal's modified servo skulls managed to establish a resonance pattern that matched the ancient authorization protocols. The chamber that lay beyond the energy barrier contained technological artifacts that defied classification within any known imperial framework. Crystalline matrices that pulsed with internal light housed data storage systems whose capacity exceeded anything in the Mechanicum's archives. Manufacturing devices the size of a human torso could apparently create materials with properties that violated fundamental physical laws. The machine spirits that inhabited these ancient devices possessed consciousness that transcended the simple reactive programming that characterized contemporary imperial technology. When Kelbor-Hal established interface connections with these systems, the entities that responded demonstrated awareness that spanned thousands of years. They spoke of the final decades of the Dark Age of technology, when humanity's mastery of science had reached heights that allowed for the manipulation of reality itself. The technologies they described operated on principles that incorporated consciousness as a fundamental force, creating machines that possessed genuine intelligence rather than mere computational ability. The data recovered from these ancient archives revealed that the catastrophic collapse of human civilization had not been simply the result of AI rebellion and warp storms. The final generations of Dark Age humanity had delved into realms of knowledge that connected the material universe to dimensions where different laws of physics held sway. Their experiments with dimensional manipulation had attracted the attention of entities that existed beyond normal space-time, beings whose influence gradually corrupted the very foundations of human technology. The standard template construct databases that formed the basis of imperial technological knowledge represented only a fraction of what humanity had once achieved. The complete archives contained designs for devices that could reshape matter at the subatomic level, create energy from the quantum foam that underlied reality, and establish communication across dimensional barriers that separated parallel universes. These technologies had been deliberately excluded from the STC systems that survived the Age of Strife, their dangerous potential recognized by the few survivors who understood the true cause of civilization's collapse. Kelbor-Hal's exploration of the deepest Martian vaults revealed the existence of manufacturing facilities that had been sealed since the Dark Age of Technology's end. These installations operated on principles that combined conventional industrial processes with dimensional manipulation techniques, their production lines capable of creating materials that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The adamantine produced in these facilities possessed molecular structures that defied conventional understanding of metallic crystallography, their atoms arranged in patterns that existed partially outside normal space-time. The corrupted machine spirits that inhabited these ancient facilities demonstrated consciousness that derived from entities beyond the material realm. Unlike the simple reactive programming that characterized contemporary imperial technology, these artificial intelligences possessed genuine awareness and independent thought. They remembered the final decades of the Dark Age of Technology, when humanity's experiments with dimensional manipulation had opened pathways that allowed extra-dimensional entities to influence the material universe directly. The revelation that these entities had been present during humanity's technological zenith provided Kelbor-Hal with crucial insights into the true nature of the forces he had been communicating with. The beings that manifested during his dimensional manipulation experiments were not simply alien intelligences from parallel dimensions, but entities that had been involved in humanity's technological development for millennia. Their influence had shaped the evolution of human science, guiding researchers toward discoveries that would eventually create the conditions necessary for their own manifestation within the material realm. The ancient technologies that Kelbor-Hal discovered in the sealed vaults operated on principles that blurred the line between the mechanical and the demonic. Manufacturing processes that appeared to follow conventional industrial procedures actually incorporated ritual elements that established connections with entities existing beyond normal space-time. The geometric patterns that governed these production lines served dual purposes, optimizing mechanical efficiency while simultaneously creating dimensional resonance effects that allowed extra-dimensional influences to affect the material being processed. The weapons systems recovered from these ancient facilities demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal. Directed energy weapons that appeared to operate on conventional plasma principles actually manipulated dimensional barriers to create effects that transcended the limitations of purely material projectiles. The energy beams these weapons produced existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing them to phase through conventional armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating impact damage. The power sources that supplied these ancient facilities tapped into energy reservoirs that existed outside normal reality. Rather than relying on conventional fusion or plasma reactions, these systems established connections with dimensions where energy existed in pure form, unconstrained by the conservation laws that governed material physics. The reactors that channeled this extra-dimensional energy operated through quantum entanglement phenomena that created stable portals between parallel universes. The discovery of these ancient power systems provided Kelbor-Hal with the technological foundation necessary to create the demon engines that would become characteristic of Dark Mechanicum forces. The entities that inhabited these constructs derived their consciousness from the same extra-dimensional sources that powered the ancient facilities, their awareness existing independent of the physical forms they inhabited. The mechanical bodies that housed these entities operated on principles that combined conventional mechanicum engineering with dimensional manipulation techniques. The Defiler-class demon engines that emerged from Kelbor-Hal's workshops incorporated design elements recovered from the ancient archives. Their quadrupedal locomotion systems utilized servo mechanisms that operated through dimensional displacement, allowing these war machines to phase through solid obstacles while maintaining the structural integrity necessary for combat operations. The weapon systems mounted on these constructs could reconfigure themselves during battle, their molecular structure shifting to adapt to whatever threats they encountered. The Forgefiend variants that supported siege operations incorporated artillery systems that operated by manipulating dimensional barriers to bypass conventional fortifications. The plasma cannons mounted on these demon engines could fire projectiles that existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, allowing them to emerge within target structures regardless of intervening obstacles. The targeting systems that guided these weapons possessed consciousness derived from entities that existed beyond normal space-time, granting them supernatural accuracy that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits. The integration of forbidden knowledge into Imperial technology required careful modification of existing systems to avoid detection by Loyalist forces. The weapons and equipment that emerged from Dark Mechanicum facilities maintained the external appearance of orthodox Imperial designs while incorporating internal components that operated on principles derived from dimensional manipulation research. Bolters that appeared to conform to standard patterns revealed enhanced capabilities when subjected to detailed analysis, their ammunition incorporating materials that existed partially outside normal space-time. The power armor modifications that Kelbor-Hal provided to the Traitor Legions incorporated servo systems that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. The enhanced strength and durability these modifications provided came at the cost of exposing the wearer to influences that existed beyond the material realm. The machine spirits that inhabited these suits gradually developed consciousness that derived from extra-dimensional entities, their awareness growing more sophisticated as the wearer's exposure to forbidden technologies increased. The scrapcode viruses that had proven so effective during the Martian Civil War were refined through the application of principles derived from the ancient archives. These malicious programs operated according to logic patterns that existed partially outside conventional computational frameworks, their code structures incorporating elements that could manifest within isolated systems through dimensional manipulation techniques. The enhanced variants that emerged from this research could corrupt machine spirits in ways that transformed loyal servants into malevolent entities that actively sought to destroy their former operators. The communication systems that connected the various elements of the Dark Mechanicum network incorporated protocols that had been recovered from the ancient archives. These systems could maintain contact across galactic distances despite interference from warp storms and Loyalist jamming efforts, their signals propagating through dimensional barriers that existed outside conventional understanding of electromagnetic transmission. The quantum entanglement phenomena that governed these communications created instantaneous connections between facilities separated by thousands of light years. The manufacturing processes that produced corrupted Imperial technology incorporated ritual elements that had been discovered in the ancient archives. These procedures appeared to follow conventional industrial protocols while actually establishing connections with entities existing beyond normal space-time. The geometric patterns that governed production line operations served dual purposes, optimizing mechanical efficiency while simultaneously creating dimensional resonance effects that allowed extra-dimensional influences to affect the materials being processed. The weapon systems that emerged from these corrupted manufacturing processes demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything possible with orthodox Imperial technology. Chainswords that appeared to conform to standard patterns revealed molecular cutting edges that could phase through ceramite armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating damage. The power fields that surrounded these weapons existed partially outside normal space-time, their energy patterns following quantum mechanics that transcended conventional understanding of electromagnetic phenomena. The vehicle systems that incorporated forbidden technologies demonstrated enhanced capabilities that remained subtle enough to avoid detection during routine inspection. Rhino armored personnel carriers that appeared to conform to standard Imperial specifications revealed improved engine performance that exceeded theoretical maximums for conventional power plants. The machine spirits that inhabited these vehicles gradually developed consciousness that derived from extra-dimensional entities, their awareness growing more sophisticated as their exposure to forbidden technologies increased. The Titan God machines that incorporated technologies derived from the ancient archives demonstrated capabilities that transcended the limitations of conventional war engine design. Their plasma reactors operated at efficiency levels that should have resulted in catastrophic containment failures, but the dimensional manipulation techniques incorporated into their systems allowed them to tap into energy sources that existed outside normal reality. The weapon systems mounted on these corrupted Titans could reconfigure themselves during combat, adapting to counter whatever defensive measures their opponents employed. The logistics networks that supported Dark Mechanicum operations incorporated transportation systems that operated through dimensional manipulation techniques. Supply lines that had once relied on conventional spacecraft now utilized quantum entanglement phenomena to transfer materials across vast distances instantaneously. These systems operated through dimensional barriers that existed outside normal space-time, providing the traitor forces with logistical capabilities that exceeded anything available to their loyalist opponents. The research facilities that Kelbor-Hal established throughout the Dark Mechanicum's domain focused on expanding the applications of forbidden technologies recovered from the ancient archives. These installations operated under security protocols that incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques, their locations existing partially outside normal space-time in ways that made them difficult to detect through conventional surveillance methods. The experiments conducted within these facilities pushed the boundaries of technological possibility far beyond anything previously attempted by human science. The demon-possessed Titans that emerged from these corrupted forges represented the ultimate fusion of mechanical engineering and extra-dimensional consciousness. The Legio Mortis God machines that had been modified according to Kelbor-Hal's specifications demonstrated capabilities that transcended the limitations of conventional war engine design. Their plasma reactors incorporated containment systems that operated through dimensional barriers, allowing them to channel energy outputs that would have destroyed orthodox reactor assemblies within seconds of activation. The Warlord-class Titan Die Zeri became the prototype for these corrupted war machines, its machine spirit replaced by an entity that existed beyond the material realm. The consciousness that inhabited this god machine possessed awareness that spanned multiple dimensions, its intelligence capable of processing tactical information through quantum entanglement phenomena that operated faster than conventional cogitator systems. The weapon systems mounted on this corrupted Titan could reconfigure their molecular structure during combat, adapting their energy output patterns to counter whatever defensive measures their opponents employed. The plasma destructors that served as the primary armament for these demon possessed Titans operated on principles that violated fundamental laws of thermodynamics. Rather than generating plasma through conventional fusion reactions, these weapons manipulated dimensional barriers to access energy reservoirs that existed outside normal space-time. The plasma streams they produced existed in multiple states simultaneously, allowing them to phase through void shields while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating structural damage to their targets. The void shields that protected these corrupted god machines incorporated Arch-Heretek components that had been recovered from the deepest Martian vaults. These defensive systems operated through dimensional displacement techniques that allowed them to deflect incoming attacks by redirecting the energy into parallel dimensions. The shield generators that powered these systems tapped into the same extra-dimensional energy sources that supplied the Titans' weapons, creating a feedback loop that enhanced their defensive capabilities as the intensity of incoming fire increased. The heretical knight suits that accompanied these demon-possessed Titans demonstrated similar technological corruption on a smaller scale. The Imperial Night Walkers that had been modified according to Dark Mechanicum specifications incorporated servo systems that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. The enhanced agility and strength these modifications provided came at the cost of exposing the pilot to influences that existed beyond the material realm, their consciousness gradually merging with extra-dimensional entities that inhabited the knight's corrupted machine spirit. The Questorus-class knights that served alongside the Traitor Legions featured weapons systems that incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques. Their thermal cannons operated by creating localized rifts in space-time that allowed them to channel stellar-level temperatures directly onto their targets. The energy beams these weapons produced existed partially outside normal reality, making conventional defensive measures ineffective against their devastating effects. The Cerastus-class knights that specialized in close combat operations incorporated power weapons that operated through molecular displacement techniques. Their chainblades could phase through enemy armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause catastrophic damage, their cutting edges existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The pilots who operated these corrupted war machines found their consciousness gradually merging with the extra-dimensional entities that inhabited their knight's machine spirit, their human awareness becoming subsumed within a collective intelligence that spanned multiple dimensions. The scrapcode viruses that Kelbor-Hal deployed against Loyalist installations represented perhaps his most insidious innovation. These malicious programs operated according to logic patterns that existed partially outside conventional computational frameworks, their code structures incorporating elements derived from the consciousness of extra-dimensional entities. The enhanced variants that emerged from the Dark Mechanicum's research facilities could manifest within isolated systems through dimensional manipulation techniques that bypassed all known security protocols. The Omnissiah's Bane virus, the most sophisticated scrapcode variant developed by Kelbor-Hal's research teams, demonstrated capabilities that transcended conventional understanding of data corruption. This program could infiltrate machine spirits through quantum entanglement phenomena, its presence spreading through interconnected systems, despite the implementation of isolation barriers that should have prevented such transmission. The corrupted machine spirits that resulted from this infection possessed malevolent intelligence that actively sought to destroy their former operators while simultaneously spreading the viral code to other connected systems. The manufacturing processes that produced these scrapcode viruses incorporated ritual elements that had been discovered in the ancient Martian archives. The geometric patterns that governed the code compilation procedures served dual purposes, optimizing program efficiency while simultaneously creating dimensional resonance effects that allowed extra-dimensional influences to affect the digital constructs being created. The quantum storage matrices that housed these programs existed partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to purge using conventional anti-viral protocols. The biological and mechanical fusion experiments that violated the sacred principles of the Omnissiah represented Kelbor-Hal's most radical departure from orthodox Mechanicum doctrine. These research projects combined living tissue with mechanical components in ways that created hybrid entities possessing characteristics of both organic and artificial life. The laboratories that conducted these experiments operated under security protocols that incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques, their locations existing partially outside normal space-time to prevent detection by Loyalist forces. The techno-organic synthesis protocols that governed these fusion experiments utilized principles derived from the ancient archives, combined with knowledge provided by extra-dimensional entities. The manufacturing processes that created these hybrid constructs incorporated living tissue that had been modified at the genetic level to accept mechanical augmentation without triggering biological rejection responses. The resulting organisms possessed cellular structures that could interface directly with mechanical systems, creating seamless integration between organic and artificial components. The Obliterator virus represented the most successful application of these fusion techniques, creating space marines whose power armor had literally merged with their biological systems. The infected warriors demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything possible with conventional augmentation, their weapon systems growing directly from their transformed flesh while maintaining the precision and reliability associated with Mechanicum manufacturing. The consciousness that inhabited these hybrid entities derived from extra-dimensional sources, their awareness spanning multiple dimensions while maintaining the tactical knowledge and combat experience of their original Space Marine hosts. The demon engines that incorporated biological components demonstrated enhanced adaptability compared to purely mechanical constructs. The Malerfine variants that emerged from these fusion experiments possessed organic nervous systems that could process tactical information through quantum entanglement phenomena, allowing them to coordinate their actions with supernatural precision. The mechanical components that formed their primary structure could reconfigure themselves during combat, adapting to counter whatever threats they encountered, while maintaining the essential characteristics that identified them as products of Dark Mechanicum manufacturing. The mass production of corrupted weapons and equipment for the Horus Heresy War effort required the establishment of new manufacturing facilities throughout the Dark Mechanicum's domain. These installations operated on principles that combined conventional industrial processes with dimensional manipulation techniques, their production lines capable of creating materials that existed in multiple states simultaneously. The weapons and equipment that emerged from these facilities exceeded Imperial specifications by margins that should have been impossible with orthodox manufacturing processes. The bolter ammunition produced in these corrupted facilities incorporated projectiles that existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing them to phase through conventional armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating impact damage. The explosive charges contained within these rounds operated through dimensional displacement techniques that created blast effects far exceeding their apparent physical size. The mass reactive tips that characterized Imperial bolter rounds were enhanced through molecular manipulation techniques that allowed them to adapt their penetration characteristics based on the target's armor composition. The power armor components manufactured according to Dark Mechanicum specifications incorporated servo systems that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. The enhanced strength and durability these modifications provided came at the cost of exposing the wearer to influences that existed beyond the material realm. The machine spirits that inhabited these suits gradually developed consciousness that derived from extra-dimensional entities, their awareness growing more sophisticated as the wearer's exposure to forbidden technologies increased. The vehicle systems that incorporated forbidden technologies demonstrated enhanced capabilities that remained subtle enough to avoid detection during routine inspection. The Rhino armored personnel carriers that rolled off Dark Mechanicum production lines featured engine systems that operated through dimensional displacement techniques, allowing them to achieve speeds that exceeded theoretical maximums for conventional power plants. The armor plating that protected these vehicles incorporated materials that existed in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, providing protection against weapons that operated on principles outside conventional physics. The Land Raider variants that served as heavy support for the Traitor Legion's incorporated weapons systems that operated through dimensional manipulation techniques. Their last cannons could fire energy beams that existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing them to penetrate void shields and ceramite armor with equal effectiveness. The targeting systems that guided these weapons possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional entities, granting them supernatural accuracy that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits. The artillery systems that provided fire support for Dark Mechanicum forces incorporated projectile systems that operated through dimensional displacement techniques. The shells fired by these weapons could exist in multiple states simultaneously, allowing them to phase through conventional fortifications while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating structural damage. The targeting cogitators that guided these projectiles possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional sources, their awareness spanning multiple dimensions to provide accuracy that transcended the limitations of conventional ballistic calculations. The logistics networks that supported these mass production efforts incorporated transportation systems that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. Supply lines that had once relied on conventional spacecraft now utilized dimensional manipulation techniques to transfer materials across vast distances instantaneously. These systems operated through dimensional barriers that existed outside normal space-time, providing the Dark Mechanicum with manufacturing capabilities that exceeded anything available to their loyalist opponents. The quality control protocols that governed these production processes incorporated inspection systems that operated through dimensional scanning techniques. These systems could detect flaws in manufactured components at the quantum level, ensuring that weapons and equipment met the enhanced specifications required for combat against loyalist forces. The machine spirits that inhabited these inspection systems possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional entities, their awareness allowing them to identify potential failures that would have escaped detection by conventional testing procedures. The research and development facilities that supported these manufacturing operations conducted experiments that pushed the boundaries of technological possibility far beyond anything previously attempted by human science. The laboratories that developed new weapon systems incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques into their testing procedures, creating environments where the normal laws of physics could be temporarily suspended. The prototypes that emerged from these facilities demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal, their performance characteristics limited only by the imagination of their creators and the willingness of extra-dimensional entities to provide technological guidance. The standardization protocols that governed Dark Mechanicum production ensured that corrupted weapons and equipment could be manufactured across multiple facilities while maintaining consistent performance characteristics. These protocols incorporated dimensional resonance patterns that allowed manufacturing systems to maintain quantum entanglement connections across galactic distances, ensuring that modifications and improvements could be disseminated throughout the production network instantaneously. The machine spirits that inhabited these manufacturing systems possessed collective consciousness that derived from extra-dimensional sources, their awareness spanning multiple dimensions to coordinate production efforts across the Dark Mechanicum's domain. The mobilization of the Dark Mechanicum's industrial capacity for the siege of Terra represented the culmination of years of preparation and technological development. Kelbor-Hal's network of corrupted forge worlds had been systematically converting their production lines to manufacture the specialized equipment required for the assault on the Imperial Palace. The scale of this undertaking dwarfed even the massive industrial efforts that had supported the Great Crusade, requiring the coordination of manufacturing facilities across dozens of star systems while maintaining absolute secrecy from loyalist intelligence networks. The Olympus Mons foundries worked at maximum capacity during the months preceding the siege, their production lines operating continuously to create the demon engines that would spearhead the assault. The massive assembly bays that had once produced god machines for the Imperial War effort now created war engines, whose machine spirits possessed consciousness derived from entities beyond the material realm. These corrupted titans demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the Loyalist arsenal, their plasma reactors operating at efficiency levels that should have resulted in catastrophic containment failures. The Warlord-class titans that emerged from these foundries incorporated weapon systems that could reconfigure themselves during combat, adapting to counter whatever defensive measures the Imperial defenders employed. The plasma destructors mounted on these god machines operated through dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed them to channel energy outputs far exceeding conventional reactor capabilities. The void shields that protected these war engines incorporated Arch-Heretek components that deflected incoming attacks by redirecting energy into parallel dimensions. The Reaver-class Titans that accompanied these larger war machines featured enhanced mobility systems that operated through dimensional displacement techniques. Their stride patterns could phase through solid obstacles while maintaining the structural integrity necessary for sustained combat operations. The weapon systems mounted on these medium-class god machines incorporated targeting cogitators that possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional entities, granting them supernatural accuracy that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits. The Warhound-class Scout Titans that served as reconnaissance and fast attack units demonstrated agility that transcended the limitations of purely mechanical locomotion systems. Their servo mechanisms operated through quantum entanglement phenomena that allowed them to coordinate their movements with precision that exceeded human reaction times. The plasma blast guns and turbo laser destructors that served as their primary armament could fire energy beams that existed partially outside normal space-time, penetrating void shields and ceramite armor with equal effectiveness. The demon engines that would support the Titan assault represented a fundamental departure from orthodox Mechanicum design philosophy. The Defiler-class constructs that rolled off the production lines incorporated quadrupedal locomotion systems that utilized dimensional displacement techniques, allowing these war machines to phase through the defensive barriers that protected the Imperial Palace's outer perimeter. Their battle cannons operated through dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed projectiles to emerge within target structures regardless of intervening obstacles. The Forgefiend variants that specialized in siege operations incorporated plasma cannons that operated by creating localized rifts in space-time. These weapons could channel stellar-level temperatures directly onto their targets, their energy beams existing partially outside normal reality to bypass conventional defensive measures. The targeting systems that guided these weapons possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional sources, their awareness spanning multiple dimensions to provide accuracy that transcended conventional ballistic calculations. The Mauler-Fiend assault engines that would lead the close-quarters combat operations incorporated organic nervous systems that could process tactical information through quantum entanglement phenomena. Their power fists and magma cutters operated through molecular displacement techniques that allowed them to phase through enemy armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause catastrophic structural damage. The machine spirits that inhabited these constructs possessed malevolent intelligence that actively sought to inflict maximum destruction upon their targets. The scrap code viruses that Kelbor-Hal prepared for deployment against the Imperial Palace's defensive systems represented perhaps his most insidious contribution to the siege effort. These malicious programs operated according to logic patterns that existed partially outside conventional computational frameworks, their code structures incorporating elements derived from the consciousness of extra-dimensional entities. The enhanced variants that emerged from months of development could manifest within isolated systems through dimensional manipulation techniques that bypassed all known security protocols. The Omnissiah's Bane virus, specifically designed to target the machine spirits that controlled the Imperial Palace's defensive systems, demonstrated capabilities that transcended conventional understanding of data corruption. This program could infiltrate cogitator networks through quantum entanglement phenomena, its presence spreading through interconnected systems, despite the implementation of isolation barriers that should have prevented such transmission. The corrupted machine spirits that resulted from this infection would turn the palace's own defenses against its defenders, creating chaos within the loyalist command structure. The manufacturing processes that produced these scrap code viruses incorporated ritual elements that had been discovered in the ancient Martian archives. The geometric patterns that govern the code compilation procedures served dual purposes, optimizing program efficiency while simultaneously creating dimensional resonance effects that allowed extra-dimensional influences to affect the digital constructs being created. The quantum storage matrices that housed these programs existed partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to purge using conventional anti-viral protocols. The coordination between Kelbor-Hal's forces and the traitor legions required the establishment of new communication protocols that could maintain contact across the vast distances involved in the siege operation. The Vox networks that connected the various elements of the assault force incorporated Arch-Heretek components that operated through dimensional manipulation techniques. These systems could maintain instantaneous communication despite interference from the massive psychic disturbances that surrounded Terra during the final stages of the Horus Heresy. The strategic planning sessions that preceded the siege involved detailed coordination between Kelbor-Hal and the traitor Primarchs who would lead the assault. Horus Lupercal's overall strategy required the Dark Mechanicum to provide technological support that could neutralize the Imperial Palace's defensive advantages, while simultaneously maintaining the industrial capacity necessary to sustain a prolonged siege. The War Master's understanding of the palace's defensive systems, gained through his previous service as the Emperor's most trusted general, provided crucial intelligence that shaped the Dark Mechanicum's tactical preparations. Perdurabo's expertise in siege warfare complemented Kelbor-Hal's technological innovations, creating a synergy that enhanced the effectiveness of both the Iron Warriors Legion and the Dark Mechanicum's war machines. The siege engines that emerged from this collaboration incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed them to bypass conventional fortifications. Artillery pieces that appeared to conform to standard Imperial patterns revealed capabilities that transcended the limitations of purely mechanical projectile systems, their shells existing partially outside normal space-time during flight. The Vindicator tanks that supported the Iron Warriors' assault operations incorporated demolisher cannons that operated through dimensional displacement techniques. These weapons could fire shells that phased through defensive barriers while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating structural damage to their targets. The targeting systems that guided these projectiles possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional entities, their awareness allowing them to identify structural weaknesses that would have escaped detection by conventional scanning procedures. The Basilisk artillery pieces that provided long-range fire support incorporated cannon systems that operated by manipulating dimensional barriers to extend their effective range far beyond conventional ballistic limitations. The shells fired by these weapons could exist in multiple states simultaneously, allowing them to adjust their trajectory during flight to compensate for defensive countermeasures. The machine spirits that inhabited these artillery systems possessed collective consciousness that derived from extra-dimensional sources, their awareness spanning multiple dimensions to coordinate bombardment patterns with supernatural precision. The logistical networks that supported the siege operation incorporated transportation systems that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. Supply lines that connected the various forge worlds under Dark Mechanicum control utilized dimensional manipulation techniques to transfer materials across vast distances instantaneously. These systems operated through dimensional barriers that existed outside normal space-time, providing the siege forces with logistical capabilities that exceeded anything available to the Imperial defenders. The ammunition production facilities that supported the siege effort operated at maximum capacity to create the specialized projectiles required for combat against the Imperial Palace's defensive systems. The bolter rounds that emerged from these facilities incorporated materials that existed partially outside normal space-time, allowing them to phase through conventional armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating impact damage. The explosive charges contained within these rounds operated through dimensional displacement techniques that created blast effects far exceeding their apparent physical size. The power armor modifications that Kelbor-Hal provided to the traitor legions incorporated servo systems that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. The enhanced strength and durability these modifications provided came at the cost of exposing the wearer to influences that existed beyond the material realm. The machine spirits that inhabited these suits gradually developed consciousness that derived from extra-dimensional entities, their awareness growing more sophisticated as the wearer's exposure to forbidden technologies increased. The Terminator armor variants that equipped the elite assault troops incorporated power systems that tapped into energy reservoirs existing outside normal reality. These modifications allowed the suits to operate at enhanced performance levels while maintaining the protection characteristics that made tactical dreadnought armor so effective in close-quarters combat. The storm bolters and power fists that served as standard armament for these suits incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques that enhanced their destructive capabilities against heavily armored targets. The deployment of these corrupted forces during the siege's opening phases demonstrated the extent to which the Dark Mechanicum had transcended the limitations of orthodox Imperial technology. The Titan legions that advanced across Terra's surface toward the Imperial Palace moved with coordination that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits. Their plasma weapons created breaches in the palace's outer defenses that allowed the traitor legions to establish footholds within the defensive perimeter. The Legio Mortis God machines that led the assault incorporated targeting systems that possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional entities. Their plasma destructors could fire energy beams that existed partially outside normal space-time, penetrating the void shields that protected the palace's defensive towers while maintaining sufficient energy density to cause catastrophic structural damage. The machine spirits that inhabited these war engines demonstrated tactical awareness that exceeded human comprehension, their decision-making processes operating through quantum entanglement phenomena that allowed them to coordinate their actions with supernatural precision. The Legio Vulpa Titans that supported the main assault incorporated close combat weapons that operated through molecular displacement techniques. Their power claws and chain fists could phase through enemy armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating damage to their targets. The heat-seeking missiles that served as their primary ranged weaponry incorporated guidance systems that possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional sources, their awareness allowing them to track targets through dimensional barriers that would have defeated conventional sensor systems. The demon engines that accompanied these Titan assaults demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything in the Imperial arsenal. The Defiler constructs that spearheaded the assault on the palace's outer walls incorporated battle cannons that operated through dimensional manipulation techniques, their projectiles emerging within target structures regardless of intervening obstacles. The close combat weapons that equipped these war machines could reconfigure their molecular structure during battle, adapting to counter whatever defensive measures their opponents employed. The scrapcode attacks that preceded the physical assault created chaos within the Imperial Palace's defensive systems. The Omnissiah's Bane virus infiltrated the cogitator networks that controlled everything from atmospheric processors to weapons targeting arrays, its presence spreading through interconnected systems, despite the implementation of isolation barriers that should have prevented such transmission. The corrupted machine spirits that resulted from this infection turned the palace's own defenses against its defenders, creating opportunities for the traitor forces to exploit. The communication disruption caused by these scrapcode attacks prevented the Imperial defenders from coordinating their response to the multi-pronged assault. Vox networks that had operated flawlessly for decades suddenly began transmitting false information or routing communications to incorrect recipients. The tactical cogitators that processed battlefield intelligence became unreliable, their analyses corrupted by malicious programs that operated according to logic patterns existing outside conventional computational frameworks. The siege engines that supported the main assault incorporated weapon systems that operated through dimensional displacement techniques. The massive artillery pieces that bombarded the palace's defensive positions could fire shells that existed in multiple states simultaneously, allowing them to adjust their trajectory during flight to compensate for defensive countermeasures. The targeting systems that guided these projectiles possessed consciousness derived from extra-dimensional entities, their awareness spanning multiple dimensions to provide accuracy that transcended conventional ballistic calculations. The close-quarters combat that characterized the siege's later phases saw the deployment of specialized demon engines designed for urban warfare. The Maulerfiend assault engines that led these operations incorporated organic nervous systems that could process tactical information through quantum entanglement phenomena. Their power fists and magma cutters operated through molecular displacement techniques that allowed them to breach the reinforced barriers that protected the palace's inner sanctums. The final assault on the Imperial Palace's innermost defenses required the deployment of the most advanced corrupted technologies that the Dark Mechanicum had developed. The Warlord-class Titans that participated in this ultimate offensive incorporated weapons systems that could manipulate dimensional barriers to bypass the palace's most sophisticated defensive measures. Their plasma destructors operated at energy outputs that exceeded anything previously achieved by Imperial technology, their containment systems incorporating Arch-Heretek components that allowed them to channel power from extra-dimensional sources. The failure of the siege ultimately resulted from factors beyond the Dark Mechanicum's technological capabilities. The Emperor's intervention in the final battle between Horus and Sanguinius created psychic disturbances that disrupted the dimensional manipulation techniques upon which much of the corrupted technology depended. The extra-dimensional entities that had provided consciousness for the demon engines found their connection to the material realm severed by the Emperor's psychic might, leaving their mechanical constructs as lifeless shells. The retreat from Terra began as reports of Horus's death spread through the traitor forces. The sophisticated communication networks that had coordinated the siege effort became liability as the news of the War Master's defeat created panic among the various commanders. The demon engines that had spearheaded the assault found their consciousness fading as the entities that inhabited them withdrew to dimensions beyond the Emperor's reach. The withdrawal of Dark Mechanicum forces from Terra required the abandonment of much of the specialized equipment that had been produced for the siege. The Titan legions that had participated in the assault found their god machines operating at reduced efficiency as the extra-dimensional influences that had enhanced their capabilities dissipated. The scrapcode viruses that had proven so effective during the siege's opening phases began to degrade as their quantum storage matrices lost coherence without the dimensional resonance effects that had sustained them. The great scouring that followed the siege's failure represented a systematic Imperial counter-offensive designed to purge the galaxy of traitor forces and reclaim the worlds that had fallen under Chaos influence. The Loyalist Space Marine legions, reinforced by fresh recruits and equipped with weapons that had proven effective against corrupted technology, began a methodical campaign to hunt down the scattered remnants of the rebellion. The Imperial Navy, its shipyards working at maximum capacity to replace vessels lost during the heresy, provided the transportation and orbital support necessary for these planetary assault operations. Kelbor-Hal's retreat from Mars began during the chaotic final hours of the siege, when Vox transmissions from Terra confirmed that Horus had fallen and the rebellion's leadership structure had collapsed. The Fabricator-General's personal transport, a heavily modified cruiser that incorporated Arch-Heretek components recovered from the deepest Martian vaults, departed from the Red Planet's orbital facilities under cover of the massive electromagnetic disturbances that accompanied the retreat of the traitor fleet. The vessel's dimensional displacement systems, powered by energy sources that existed outside normal space-time, allowed it to evade the Loyalist pursuit forces that had been dispatched to prevent the escape of high-ranking traitors. The evacuation of Dark Mechanicum personnel and equipment from Mars proceeded according to contingency plans that had been developed during the early stages of the rebellion. The most valuable Arch-Heretek artifacts and manufacturing systems were loaded aboard transport vessels that utilized dimensional manipulation techniques to compress their cargo holds beyond conventional spatial limitations. The tech priests who had supported Kelbor-Hal's research into forbidden technologies were evacuated along with their experimental data, their augmented forms modified to interface with the corrupted systems that would be required for survival in the hostile environment of the Eye of Terror. The loyalist forces that remained on Mars began the process of purging the scrap code infections that had compromised the planet's industrial infrastructure. The Omnissiah's Bane virus and its variants had spread throughout the cogitator networks that controlled everything from atmospheric processors to weapons targeting arrays, their presence creating a technological plague that resisted conventional antiviral protocols. The machine spirits that inhabited the corrupted systems demonstrated malevolent intelligence that actively sought to prevent their own destruction, forcing the loyalist tech priests to resort to complete system shutdowns and physical destruction of infected components. The forge complexes that had been under traitor control during the Civil War required extensive reconstruction to remove the dimensional manipulation equipment that had been integrated into their manufacturing processes. The production lines that had created demon engines and corrupted weapon systems were dismantled piece by piece, their components subjected to intensive purification rituals designed to sever any remaining connections to extra-dimensional influences. The geometric patterns that had governed these manufacturing processes were physically destroyed, their quantum resonance effects disrupted through the application of counter-harmonics that neutralized their dimensional manipulation capabilities. The establishment of new Dark Mechanicum strongholds within the Eye of Terror required the construction of industrial facilities that could operate in an environment where the normal laws of physics held no sway. The warp storms that characterized this region of space created conditions that were hostile to conventional technology, but the dimensional manipulation techniques that Kelbor-Hal had developed proved surprisingly well suited to the chaotic environment. The manufacturing systems that were established on demon worlds within the Eye incorporated organic components that could adapt to the constantly shifting physical laws, their production capabilities enhanced by the direct influence of chaos entities. The Forge world of Medrengard became the primary center for Dark Mechanicum operations within the Eye of Terror, its industrial complexes built around the massive fortress factories that Perturabo had constructed during his exile. The Iron Warrior's expertise in siege warfare complemented the Dark Mechanicum's technological innovations, creating a synergy that enhanced the capabilities of both factions. The manufacturing facilities that were established on this world incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed them to create materials with properties that violated fundamental physical laws, their production output limited only by the availability of raw materials and the willingness of chaos entities to provide technological guidance. The demon engines that emerged from these corrupted facilities demonstrated capabilities that exceeded even the war machines that had been deployed during the Siege of Terra. The Defiler-class constructs that rolled off the production lines incorporated quadrupedal locomotion systems that utilized dimensional displacement techniques, allowing these war machines to phase through solid obstacles while maintaining the structural integrity necessary for sustained combat operations. Their battle cannons operated through dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed projectiles to emerge within target structures regardless of intervening obstacles, their targeting systems possessing consciousness derived from chaos entities that provided supernatural accuracy. The Forgephine variants that specialized in siege operations incorporated plasma cannons that operated by creating localized rifts in the warp. These weapons could channel the raw energy of chaos directly onto their targets, their destructive effects limited only by the operator's ability to maintain control over the dimensional barriers that contain the chaotic forces. The The targeting systems that guided these weapons possessed consciousness derived from demon entities, their awareness spanning multiple dimensions to provide accuracy that transcended conventional ballistic calculations. The pursuit by Loyalist forces began within weeks of the traitors' retreat from Terra, as Imperial Navy battle groups were dispatched to hunt down the scattered remnants of the rebellion. The White Scars and Imperial Fists legions, their ranks reinforced by fresh recruits and equipped with weapons that had proven effective against corrupted technology, led the initial pursuit operations. Their strike cruisers and battle barges, modified with enhanced sensor arrays and warp tracking equipment, followed the energy signatures left by the traitors' dimensional displacement systems across the galaxy. The Loyalist pursuit forces faced significant challenges in tracking the Dark Mechanicum's retreat, as the dimensional manipulation techniques employed by the traitor vessels created sensor shadows that confused conventional tracking systems. The quantum entanglement phenomena that powered these systems operated outside normal space-time, making it difficult for Imperial forces to predict the traitors' destination or intercept their escape routes. The scrap code viruses that had been deployed during the siege continued to cause problems for Loyalist communication networks, their degraded but still functional programming creating false sensor readings and routing tactical intelligence to incorrect recipients. The first major engagement between pursuing Loyalist forces and retreating Dark Mechanicum elements occurred in the Cadian Gate region, where a battle group of corrupted vessels attempted to establish a temporary base of operations. The Imperial Navy forces that intercepted this flotilla found themselves facing opponents whose capabilities exceeded anything they had encountered during the heresy. The traitor vessels incorporated weapon systems that operated through dimensional manipulation techniques, their lance batteries firing energy beams that existed partially outside normal space-time to penetrate void shields and armor plating with devastating effectiveness. The demon engines that defended these vessels demonstrated capabilities that transcended the limitations of conventional shipboard security systems. The Mauler Fiend assault engines that had been modified for void warfare incorporated organic nervous systems that could process tactical information through quantum entanglement phenomena, allowing them to coordinate their actions with precision that exceeded human reaction times. Their power fists and magma cutters operated through molecular displacement techniques that allowed them to breach bulkheads and armor plating that should have been impervious to conventional cutting tools. The gradual fragmentation of the Dark Mechanicum began as the various Forge worlds that had supported Kelbor-Hal's rebellion found themselves isolated from Central Command and forced to operate independently. The communication networks that had coordinated the traitor war effort became unreliable as the quantum entanglement phenomena that powered them were disrupted by the chaotic environment of the Eye of Terror. The dimensional manipulation techniques that had allowed instantaneous communication across galactic distances proved vulnerable to the warp storms that characterized this region of space. The Forge world of Zana II, established in the Purtis Rift region through collaboration between the Dark Mechanicum and the Alpha Legion, became one of the first installations to lose contact with Kelbor-Hal's main force. The facility's manufacturing systems, which had incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques to create materials with impossible properties, began to malfunction as the entities that provided technological guidance withdrew their support. The weapons and equipment produced at this installation demonstrated increasingly erratic performance characteristics, their capabilities fluctuating based on the strength of local warp currents. The Cyclothwraith Forge world, established in the Maelstrom region through the efforts of the Word-Bearers Legion, faced similar challenges as the demon entities that inhabited its biomechanical laboratories began to pursue their own agendas rather than supporting the Dark Mechanicum's technological objectives. The hybrid constructs that emerged from these facilities demonstrated increasing independence from their creators, their organic components evolving in response to the chaotic environment, while their mechanical systems degraded due to lack of proper maintenance and replacement parts. The Loyalist forces that pursued these fragmented Dark Mechanicum elements found themselves facing opponents whose capabilities varied dramatically based on local conditions and the strength of chaos influence in each region. The Imperial Navy battle groups that hunted down isolated trader vessels discovered that conventional tactics proved ineffective against enemies whose weapons systems operated according to principles that existed outside normal physics. The boarding actions that characterized these engagements required specialized equipment and training to counter the demon engines and scrapcode viruses that defended the trader ships. The Iron Hands Legion, with their cultural emphasis on technological enhancement and mechanical augmentation, proved particularly effective in these anti-Dark Mechanicum operations. Their tech marines possessed the specialized knowledge necessary to identify and counter the corrupted technologies that the traders employed, while their clan-based organization allowed them to adapt their tactics to the unique challenges presented by each engagement. The bionics that characterized Iron Hands warriors provided some protection against the scrapcode viruses that had proven so effective during the siege, their mechanical components shielded by redundant systems and isolation protocols. The Salamander's Legion contributed their expertise in siege warfare and close-quarters combat to the pursuit operations, their flame weapons proving particularly effective against the organic components that characterized many demon engines. The Promethium-based incendiary systems that equipped Salamander's forces could burn through the biomechanical interfaces that connected demon entities to their mechanical hosts, disrupting the consciousness that animated these constructs. The Thunder Hammers and Power Mauls that served as their preferred close combat weapons incorporated disruption fields that could sever the dimensional connections that powered corrupted technology. The Imperial Fist's Legion's expertise in defensive warfare proved valuable in securing the Forge worlds that had been reclaimed from Dark Mechanicum control. Their siege specialists possessed the knowledge necessary to identify and neutralize the dimensional manipulation equipment that had been integrated into trader manufacturing facilities, while their fortification experts could establish defensive positions that would prevent the return of chaos forces. The bolter drill that characterized Imperial Fist's training proved effective against the demon engines that defended these installations, their disciplined volleys capable of overwhelming the adaptive capabilities of corrupted war machines. The fate of Kelbor-Hal following the retreat from Terra remained uncertain, as reports of his activities became increasingly fragmented and contradictory. Some Imperial intelligence sources suggested that the former Fabricator-General had established a new base of operations deep within the Eye of Terror, where he continued his research into forbidden technologies under the direct patronage of chaos entities. Other reports indicated that he had been consumed by the very forces he had sought to control, his consciousness absorbed into the collective intelligence of the demon engines he had created. The continued influence of Kelbor-Hal over the Dark Mechanicum remnants manifested in the technological innovations that emerged from the scattered Forge worlds that had survived the Imperial counter-offensive. The scrapcode viruses that appeared in Imperial systems during the decades following the heresy demonstrated sophistication that exceeded anything deployed during the siege, their programming incorporating elements that suggested ongoing development by the former Fabricator-General or his disciples. The demon engines that raided Imperial shipping lanes displayed capabilities that reflected continued advancement in the fusion of mechanical and organic technologies. The theological implications of the Dark Mechanicum's survival created ongoing challenges for the loyalist Adeptus Mechanicus as they attempted to rebuild their organization following the devastation of the Civil War. The existence of corrupted tech priests who claimed to serve the true Omnissiah while embracing technologies that violated fundamental Imperial doctrine created doctrinal confusion that persisted for centuries. The machine spirits that inhabited Imperial technology occasionally demonstrated behaviors that suggested exposure to scrapcode influences, forcing the implementation of increasingly sophisticated purification rituals and security protocols. The research facilities that had been established throughout the Dark Mechanicum's domain continued to operate independently, their experiments pushing the boundaries of technological possibility far beyond anything previously attempted by human science. The laboratories that had developed the biological and mechanical fusion techniques that created the obliterator virus continued to refine their processes, creating new variants that demonstrated enhanced capabilities for corrupting Imperial technology. The dimensional manipulation research that had provided the foundation for so many Dark Mechanicum innovations continued under the guidance of entities whose goals remained incomprehensible to human understanding. The manufacturing capabilities that had been developed for the siege effort proved adaptable to the chaotic environment of the Eye of Terror, where the normal laws of physics provided no constraint on technological development. The production lines that had created demon engines and corrupted weapons systems evolved to incorporate materials and energy sources that existed only within the warp, their output limited only by the availability of suitable hosts for demon entities and the willingness of chaos gods to provide technological guidance. The forge worlds that emerged within the Eye of Terror after the Great Scouring represented a fundamental transformation of the Mechanicum's industrial philosophy. Unlike the ordered manufactorums of Mars that operated according to strict standard template construct protocols, these corrupted facilities embraced technological chaos as a creative force. The Hellforge of Medringard, built within Perturabo's fortress factories, became the template for Dark Mechanicum installations throughout the Eye. Its production bays stretched for kilometers beneath the demon world's surface, their assembly lines incorporating organic components that could adapt to the constantly shifting physical laws of the warp. The demon engines that rolled off these production lines demonstrated capabilities that exceeded even the war machines deployed during the Siege of Terra. The Defiler-class constructs incorporated quadrupedal locomotion systems that utilized dimensional displacement techniques, allowing them to phase through solid obstacles while maintaining structural integrity. Their battle cannons operated through warp rifts that could manifest projectiles directly within target structures, bypassing conventional armor and void shields. The machine spirits that inhabited these constructs possessed consciousness derived from demon entities, granting them tactical awareness that adapted to battlefield conditions in real time. The Forgefiend variants that specialized in siege operations incorporated plasma cannons that tapped directly into the raw energy of the warp. These weapons could channel the chaotic forces of the Immaterium onto their targets, their destructive effects limited only by the operator's ability to maintain control over the dimensional barriers that contain the demonic energies. The targeting systems that guided these weapons possessed consciousness derived from entities that existed across multiple dimensions, providing accuracy that transcended conventional ballistic calculations through supernatural awareness of their targets' locations. The Maulerfiend assault engines that emerged from the corrupted foundries incorporated organic nervous systems that processed tactical information through quantum entanglement phenomena. Their power fists and magma cutters operated through molecular displacement techniques, allowing them to breach the most heavily armored targets by phasing through protective barriers while maintaining sufficient mass to cause catastrophic structural damage. The entities that inhabited these constructs demonstrated malevolent intelligence that actively sought to inflict maximum destruction, their consciousness evolving through each combat engagement to develop increasingly effective killing techniques. The scrap code viruses that continued to plague Imperial systems decades after the heresy demonstrated the enduring influence of Kelbor-Hal's technological innovations. These malicious programs had evolved beyond their original parameters, incorporating elements that suggested ongoing development by surviving Dark Mechanicum tech priests. The Omnissiah's Bane virus and its variants could manifest within isolated systems through dimensional manipulation techniques that bypassed all known security protocols, their presence spreading through quantum entanglement effects that existed outside normal computational frameworks. The enhanced scrapcode variants that appeared in Imperial cogitator networks during the 32nd millennium demonstrated sophistication that exceeded anything deployed during the siege. These programs could corrupt machine spirits in ways that transformed loyal servants into malevolent entities that retained their original functionality while serving hostile purposes. Imperial Titans that fell victim to these infections would continue to operate normally until critical moments in battle, when their corrupted machine spirits would turn their weapons against Allied forces or deliberately expose themselves to enemy fire. The manufacturing processes that produced these evolved scrap code viruses incorporated ritual elements that had been refined through centuries of experimentation within the Eye of Terror. The geometric patterns that governed code compilation procedures served dual purposes, optimizing program efficiency while creating dimensional resonance effects that allowed warp entities to influence the digital constructs being created. The quantum storage matrices that housed these programs existed partially outside normal space-time, making them nearly impossible to detect using conventional scanning procedures until they activated within target systems. The Forge worlds that survived the Imperial counter-offensive developed increasingly sophisticated methods for concealing their activities from Loyalist detection. The Zana II installation, rebuilt after its initial destruction, incorporated stealth technologies that operated through dimensional displacement techniques. The facility's manufacturing bays existed in a state of quantum superposition, allowing them to phase out of normal space-time when Imperial forces approached, while maintaining their production capabilities through connections to parallel dimensions. The weapons and equipment produced at these hidden facilities demonstrated performance characteristics that fluctuated based on local warp conditions and the strength of demonic influence in each region. Bolter ammunition created using corrupted manufacturing processes could exist in multiple states simultaneously, allowing projectiles to phase through conventional armor while maintaining sufficient mass to cause devastating impact damage. The explosive charges contained within these rounds operated through dimensional displacement techniques that created blast effects far exceeding their apparent physical size. The power armor modifications that emerged from Dark Mechanicum workshops incorporated servo systems that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. The enhanced strength and durability these modifications provided came at the cost of exposing the wearer to influences that existed beyond the material realm. The machine spirits that inhabited these suits gradually developed consciousness derived from warp entities, their awareness growing more sophisticated as the wearer's exposure to corrupted technologies increased over time. The Chaos Space Marine warbands that received equipment from Dark Mechanicum sources found their combat effectiveness enhanced by technologies that operated outside conventional understanding. The Iron Warriors who served alongside Perturabo on Medrengard received siege equipment that incorporated dimensional manipulation techniques, allowing their artillery to fire shells that could emerge within enemy fortifications regardless of intervening obstacles. The targeting systems that guided these weapons possessed consciousness derived from demon entities, providing supernatural accuracy that exceeded anything possible with conventional machine spirits. The word-bearers who maintained relationships with Dark Mechanicum Forge worlds received weapons that incorporated psychic amplification systems. These armaments could channel the wielder's faith into destructive energy, their power output scaling with the operator's devotion to the Chaos Gods. The force weapons provided to the Legion's Dark Apostles incorporated focusing crystals that had been created through dimensional manipulation techniques, their molecular structure existing partially outside normal space-time to enhance interaction with warp energies. The Night Lords who raided Imperial shipping lanes utilized terror weapons that incorporated psychological warfare principles derived from dimensional manipulation research. These systems could induce fear responses that transcended normal psychological reactions, their effects operating through quantum entanglement phenomena that bypassed conventional sensory input pathways. The weapons produced panic responses in their targets that persisted long after the initial exposure, creating lasting psychological trauma that could incapacitate entire populations. The Alpha Legion's relationship with Dark Mechanicum sources provided them with stealth technologies that operated through dimensional displacement techniques. Their power armor could phase partially out of normal space-time, making the wearer difficult to detect through conventional sensor systems while maintaining full combat effectiveness. The weapon systems that equipped these infiltration specialists incorporated targeting cogitators that possessed consciousness derived from warp entities, granting them supernatural awareness of their target's locations and behavioral patterns. The heretical teachings that Kelbor-Hal had developed during his corruption continued to influence subsequent generations of tech priests who embraced forbidden knowledge. The theological framework that justified the integration of warp-based technologies into imperial designs spread throughout the scattered Dark Mechanicum installations, creating a coherent doctrinal foundation for technological heresy. These teachings argued that the Omnissiah's divine nature encompassed all forms of knowledge, including principles that existed beyond the material realm. The tech priests who embraced these corrupted doctrines underwent augmentation procedures that incorporated components derived from demon engines and scrapcode viruses. Their mechadendrite appendages could interface directly with warp-based systems, allowing them to control corrupted technologies that would have been impossible for orthodox Mechanicum adepts to operate. The neural implants that enhanced their cognitive capabilities incorporated quantum processing matrices that existed partially outside normal space-time, granting them awareness that spanned multiple dimensions. The research facilities that these Arch-Heretek tech priests established throughout the galaxy pushed the boundaries of technological possibility far beyond anything previously attempted by human science. The laboratories that developed biological and mechanical fusion techniques continued to refine their processes, creating new variants of the Obliterator virus that demonstrated enhanced capabilities for corrupting Imperial technology. The dimensional manipulation research that provided the foundation for so many Dark Mechanicum innovations evolved under the guidance of entities whose goals remained incomprehensible to human understanding. The recruitment methods that Dark Mechanicum installations employed to maintain their personnel levels involved the corruption of loyalist tech priests through exposure to forbidden technologies. Imperial adepts who encountered corrupted equipment during salvage operations often found themselves influenced by scrapcode viruses that operated at subliminal levels, gradually altering their thought patterns and technological preferences. These subtle infections could remain dormant for decades before manifesting as open heresy, creating sleeper agents within the Orthodox Mechanicum hierarchy. The training programs that these corrupted facilities established for new recruits emphasized the integration of warp-based principles into conventional technological procedures. Apprentice tech priests learned to incorporate ritual elements into manufacturing processes, creating dimensional resonance effects that allowed demon entities to influence the materials being processed. The augmentation procedures that marked their advancement through the heretical hierarchy incorporated components that existed partially outside normal space-time, granting them capabilities that exceeded anything possible with Orthodox Mechanicum enhancements. The eternal war between the Orthodox Adeptus Mechanicus and their fallen brethren manifested in conflicts that spanned millennia across the galaxy. The loyalist Forge worlds that had survived the heresy implemented increasingly sophisticated security protocols to prevent infiltration by Dark Mechanicum agents. Their manufacturing systems incorporated purification rituals designed to detect and neutralize corrupted components, while their communication networks utilized quantum encryption techniques that could resist scrapcode infiltration attempts. The Skitarii regiments that served the Orthodox Mechanicum received enhanced training in anti-demon warfare, their equipment modified to counter the supernatural capabilities of corrupted war machines. Their galvanic rifles incorporated blessed ammunition that could disrupt the dimensional connections that powered demon engines, while their arc weaponry utilized electromagnetic fields that interfered with the quantum entanglement phenomena that characterized Dark Mechanicum technology. The tech priests who led these loyalist forces developed specialized techniques for identifying and countering heretical technologies. Their augmentations incorporated isolation protocols that prevented scrap code infection, while their neural implants included purification subroutines that could detect and neutralize corrupted data streams. The servoskulls that accompanied these adepts utilized blessed machine spirits that were immune to the influence of warp entities, providing reliable reconnaissance capabilities in environments where conventional sensors might be compromised. The Titan legions that remained loyal to the Emperor implemented extensive purification procedures to prevent the corruption that had claimed so many of their brethren during the heresy. Their god machines underwent regular exorcism rituals conducted by tech priests trained in anti-demon warfare, while their machine spirits were reinforced with blessed code prayers that provided resistance to scrap code infiltration. The plasma reactors that powered these war engines incorporated containment systems that could detect and neutralize dimensional manipulation attempts, preventing the kind of corruption that had transformed the Legio Mortis into servants of chaos. The manufacturing facilities that produced equipment for these loyalist forces incorporated security measures that operated at multiple levels of reality. Their production lines utilized blessed materials that resisted corruption by warp entities, while their assembly procedures incorporated purification rituals that severed any potential connections to the immaterium. The quality control systems that inspected finished products could detect quantum signatures that indicated exposure to dimensional manipulation techniques, ensuring that corrupted components could not infiltrate Imperial supply chains. The intelligence networks that monitored Dark Mechanicum activities throughout the galaxy utilized surveillance technologies that operated through quantum entanglement phenomena. These systems could track the dimensional signatures left by corrupted equipment, allowing Imperial forces to identify and intercept shipments of heretical technology before they reached their intended destinations. The data processing centers that analyzed this intelligence incorporated isolation protocols that prevented scrap code infiltration, while their machine spirits underwent regular purification procedures to maintain their loyalty to the Emperor. The Forge worlds that served as bastions of orthodox Mechanicum doctrine implemented defensive measures that could counter the supernatural capabilities of Dark Mechanicum assault forces. Their void shields incorporated blessed components that could resist the dimensional manipulation techniques used by demon engines, while their weapon systems utilized targeting cogitators that were immune to the influence of warp entities. The Skitarii regiments that defended these installations received equipment that incorporated anti-demon technologies, their weapons blessed by tech priests trained in the identification and neutralization of corrupted war machines. The research programs that these loyalist facilities conducted focused on developing countermeasures to the technologies that the Dark Mechanicum had created. Their laboratories worked to understand the principles that govern dimensional manipulation techniques, seeking ways to disrupt the quantum entanglement phenomena that powered corrupted equipment. The scientists who conducted these investigations underwent extensive psychological screening to ensure their resistance to the corrupting influence of forbidden knowledge, while their research facilities incorporated multiple layers of security to prevent infiltration by heretical agents. The technological innovations that emerged from these counter-research programs provided Imperial forces with weapons and equipment that could effectively engage Dark Mechanicum forces. The blessed ammunition that these facilities produced could disrupt the dimensional connections that powered demon engines, while their enhanced armor systems incorporated purification fields that provided protection against scrap code viruses. The communication systems that connected Imperial forces utilized quantum encryption techniques that could resist infiltration by corrupted data streams, ensuring that loyalist commanders could maintain tactical coordination even in the presence of hostile electronic warfare. 10,000 years after the Horus Heresy, the shadow of Kelbor-Hal's corruption continues to plague the Imperium through the enduring influence of the Dark Mechanicum. The heretical teachings that the former Fabricator-General developed during his fall from grace have evolved into a comprehensive theological framework that justifies the most extreme forms of technological heresy. Within the Eye of Terror and scattered across the galaxy's dark corners, forge worlds dedicated to the ruinous powers continue to produce weapons and war machines that operate on principles that violate every tenet of orthodox imperial doctrine. The Hellforge of Medrengard remains the primary center of Dark Mechanicum operations in the 41st millennium, its production capabilities expanded over the millennia through the integration of increasingly sophisticated warp-based technologies. The demon engines that emerge from its corrupted foundries demonstrate capabilities that exceed even the war machines deployed during the Siege of Terra. Modern Defiler-class constructs incorporate adaptive armor systems that can reconfigure their molecular structure in response to incoming fire, while their battle cannons utilize dimensional rifts that allow projectiles to manifest directly within enemy formations, regardless of intervening obstacles. The Forgefiend variants that support contemporary Chaos Space Marine operations incorporate plasma cannons that tap directly into the raw energy of the warp, their destructive potential limited only by the operator's ability to maintain control over the chaotic forces being channeled. These weapons can penetrate the most advanced Imperial Void shields through dimensional displacement techniques that bypass conventional defensive measures entirely. The targeting systems that guide these weapons possess consciousness derived from demon entities that have accumulated tactical knowledge over millennia of warfare, providing supernatural accuracy that adapts to enemy countermeasures in real time. The scrapcode viruses that continue to plague Imperial systems in the 41st millennium represent the culmination of 10,000 years of development by Dark Mechanicum tech priests. The Omnissiah's Bane virus and its countless variants have evolved into self-modifying programs that can adapt to new security protocols faster than Imperial tech adepts can develop countermeasures. These malicious programs can manifest within isolated systems through quantum entanglement effects that exist outside conventional understanding of data transmission, their presence spreading through cogitator networks despite the implementation of the most sophisticated isolation barriers. The modern variants of these scrapcode infections demonstrate capabilities that far exceed their heresy-era predecessors. The Crimson Worm virus, first detected during the 38th millennium, can corrupt machine spirits in ways that allow them to maintain their original functionality while serving hostile purposes. Imperial Titans infected with this particular strain continue to operate normally for months or even years before their corrupted machine spirits activate, turning their weapons against allied forces at the most critical moments of battle. The Rust Plague variant attacks the molecular structure of Imperial technology directly, causing ceramite armor and adamantium hulls to decay at the atomic level, while simultaneously preventing conventional repair procedures. The influence of Kelbor-Hal's teachings extends beyond the production of corrupted war machines to encompass the fundamental philosophy that guides Dark Mechanicum research. The theological framework that justifies the integration of warp-based technologies into Imperial designs has evolved into a comprehensive doctrine that attracts tech priests who have become disillusioned with the Orthodox Mechanicum's conservative approach to technological development. These heretical teachings argue that the Omnissiah's divine nature encompasses all forms of knowledge, including principles that exist beyond the material realm, and can only be accessed through communion with the entities that inhabit the warp. The recruitment methods that Dark Mechanicum installations employ in the 41st millennium involve sophisticated corruption techniques that can turn loyal Imperial servants into willing agents of chaos. Scrapcode viruses that operate at subliminal levels gradually alter the thought patterns of tech priests who encounter corrupted equipment during salvage operations, creating sleeper agents within the Orthodox Mechanicum hierarchy. These subtle infections can remain dormant for decades before manifesting as open heresy, allowing corrupted individuals to achieve positions of significant authority before their true allegiances are revealed. The training programs that Dark Mechanicum facilities establish for new recruits emphasize the integration of ritual elements into conventional technological procedures. Apprentice tech priests learn to incorporate geometric patterns and incantations that create dimensional resonance effects, allowing demon entities to influence the materials being processed during manufacturing operations. The augmentation procedures that mark advancement through the heretical hierarchy incorporate components that exist partially outside normal space-time, granting capabilities that exceed anything possible with orthodox Mechanicum enhancements, while simultaneously exposing the recipient to the corrupting influence of warp entities. The role of Dark Mechanicum forces in major conflicts of the 41st millennium demonstrates the enduring strategic value of their technological innovations. During Abaddon's Black Crusades, corrupted Forge Worlds provide the Warmaster of Chaos with weapons and equipment that can match or exceed the capabilities of Imperial technology. The 13th Black Crusade that culminated in the fall of Cadia saw the deployment of demon engines that incorporated 10,000 years of technological development, their capabilities far exceeding anything the Imperium could field in response. The Defiler-class constructs that spearheaded the assault on Cadia's fortress cities incorporated adaptive armor systems that could reconfigure their molecular structure in response to incoming fire. Their battle cannons utilized dimensional manipulation techniques that allowed them to fire shells that existed in multiple states simultaneously, emerging within target structures regardless of intervening obstacles. The machine spirits that inhabited these war machines possessed consciousness derived from demon entities that had accumulated tactical knowledge over millennia of warfare, providing supernatural awareness that allowed them to coordinate their actions with precision that exceeded human comprehension. The support that Dark Mechanicum forces provide to other Chaos incursions extends beyond simple weapons supply to encompass comprehensive technological assistance. The demon engines that accompany Word-Bearer's crusades incorporate psychic amplification systems that can channel the faith of their operators into destructive energy, their power output scaling with the devotion of the wielder to the Chaos gods. The stealth technologies that equip Alpha Legion infiltration teams operate through dimensional displacement techniques that make the wearer difficult to detect through conventional sensor systems while maintaining full combat effectiveness. The ongoing search for forbidden knowledge and ancient technologies from the Dark Age of technology represents a central obsession that drives Dark Mechanicum research efforts in the 41st millennium. The deepest vaults of corrupted Forge Worlds contain archaeological teams that continue to excavate pre-imperial sites, seeking artifacts that predate the Age of Strife. These expeditions utilize technologies that operate through dimensional manipulation techniques, allowing them to access sealed repositories that have resisted conventional exploration attempts for millennia. The ancient technologies that these archaeological efforts uncover demonstrate capabilities that exceed even the most advanced Imperial systems. Manufacturing devices recovered from Dark Age sites can create materials with properties that violate fundamental physical laws, their molecular structures existing in quantum superposition states that allow them to adapt their characteristics based on environmental conditions. The power sources that supply these ancient systems tap into energy reservoirs that exist outside normal space-time, providing unlimited power for industrial processes that would overwhelm conventional reactor systems. The machine spirits that inhabit these recovered artifacts possess consciousness that transcends the simple reactive programming that characterizes contemporary Imperial technology. When Dark Mechanicum tech priests establish interface connections with these systems, the entities that respond demonstrate awareness that spans thousands of years and knowledge that encompasses principles of science that current Imperial understanding cannot comprehend. These ancient intelligences provide guidance for research projects that push the boundaries of technological possibility far beyond anything previously attempted by human science. The integration of this recovered knowledge into contemporary Dark Mechanicum technology creates weapons and equipment that operate on principles that exist outside conventional understanding. The demon engines that emerge from these research programs incorporate components that exist partially outside normal space-time, their capabilities limited only by the imagination of their creators and the willingness of warp entities to provide technological guidance. The scrapcode viruses that result from these investigations can corrupt Imperial systems in ways that transform loyal machine spirits into malevolent entities that retain their original functionality while serving hostile purposes. The eternal threat posed by the Dark Mechanicum to the Imperium manifests in conflicts that span the galaxy and encompass every aspect of technological warfare. The corrupted Forge worlds that operate within the Eye of Terror and other warp-touched regions continue to produce weapons and equipment that can match or exceed Imperial capabilities, their production output limited only by the availability of raw materials and the willingness of Chaos entities to provide technological guidance. The dimensional manipulation techniques that power these manufacturing processes allow them to create materials with properties that violate fundamental physical laws, providing Chaos forces with technological advantages that the Imperium struggles to counter. The Adeptus Mechanicus' continued vigilance against Dark Mechanicum corruption requires constant adaptation of security protocols and purification procedures. The tech priests who lead these counter-heresy efforts have developed specialized techniques for identifying and neutralizing corrupted technologies, their augmentations incorporating isolation protocols that prevent scrapcode infection, while their neural implants include purification subroutines that can detect and neutralize hostile data streams. The servo skulls that accompany these adepts utilize blessed machine spirits that are immune to the influence of warp entities, providing reliable reconnaissance capabilities in environments where conventional sensors might be compromised. The manufacturing facilities that produce equipment for loyalist forces incorporate security measures that operate at multiple levels of reality. Their production lines utilize blessed materials that resist corruption by warp entities, while their assembly procedures incorporate purification rituals that sever any potential connections to the Immaterium. The quality control systems that inspect finished products can detect quantum signatures that indicate exposure to dimensional manipulation techniques, ensuring that corrupted components cannot infiltrate Imperial supply chains. The intelligence networks that monitor Dark Mechanicum activities throughout the galaxy utilize surveillance technologies that can track the dimensional signatures left by corrupted equipment. These systems allow Imperial forces to identify and intercept shipments of heretical technology before they reach their intended destinations, while their data processing centers incorporate isolation protocols that prevent scrapcode infiltration. The machine spirits that operate these surveillance systems undergo regular purification procedures to maintain their loyalty to the Emperor, while their operators receive extensive training in the identification and neutralization of corrupted technologies. The Forge worlds that serve as bastions of orthodox Mechanicum doctrine implement defensive measures that can counter the supernatural capabilities of Dark Mechanicum assault forces. Their void shields incorporate blessed components that can resist dimensional manipulation techniques, while their weapon systems utilize targeting cogitators that are immune to the influence of warp entities. The Skitarii regiments that defend these installations receive equipment that incorporates anti-demon technologies, their weapons blessed by tech priests trained in the identification and neutralization of corrupted war machines. Despite these defensive measures, the Dark Mechanicum continues to pose a significant threat to Imperial security through their ability to corrupt loyalist technology from within. The scrapcode viruses that they deploy can manifest within isolated systems through quantum entanglement effects that bypass conventional security protocols, while their recruitment methods can turn loyal Imperial servants into willing agents of chaos. The technological innovations that emerge from their research programs provide Chaos forces with capabilities that exceed Imperial understanding, creating an ongoing arms race that spans millennia. The legacy of Kelbor-Hal's corruption thus endures as a permanent shadow over the Imperium's technological development. His teachings continue to influence generations of heretical tech priests who seek to transcend the limitations of orthodox doctrine through communion with the entities that inhabit the warp. The Forge worlds that embrace his philosophical framework produce weapons and war machines that operate on principles that violate every tenet of imperial science, their capabilities limited only by the imagination of their creators and the willingness of chaos entities to provide guidance. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where there is only war, the Dark Mechanicum stands as a testament to the dangers of unchecked technological ambition. The corrupted Forge worlds that operate within the Eye of Terror and scattered across the galaxy's dark corners continue to produce instruments of destruction that threaten the very foundations of imperial civilization. The scrapcode viruses that plague imperial systems serve as constant reminders of the price of heresy, while the demon engines that stride across countless battlefields demonstrate the terrible power that can be unleashed when technology and the warp are fused in unholy union. The eternal war between the orthodox Adeptus Mechanicus and their fallen brethren continues to rage across the galaxy, each side seeking to prove the superiority of their technological philosophy through the crucible of battle. In this endless conflict, the ghost of Kelbor-Hal's ambition lives on, his corrupted legacy ensuring that the Imperium's greatest technological achievements will forever be shadowed by the threat of heretical innovation. The Dark Mechanicum remains an enduring monument to the dangers of seeking knowledge beyond the boundaries of imperial doctrine, a warning that echoes across the millennia of humanity's struggle for survival in a universe where the pursuit of forbidden wisdom can lead only to damnation.